the full-time Mage. The extreme lightning. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301 Solution. Crackling kept exploding on the electric blade. When this attack hit the ice phoenix, there was a bang sound. The next moment, it broke apart. The white elemental ice roar was in the shape of an arc shockwave, sweeping and spreading to the night sky above the street. The air was suddenly full of icy ice, looking like a huge ice cloud floating above the block, reflecting the neon lights of the city. Tangmao didn't care about this attack method. After all, he also had the ice attribute. Although his ice attribute cultivation was not as good as the executioner's, his control and domain power, plus the power of the snow girl, were not much weaker than him. After Tangmao smashed the ice phoenix, the executioner condensed his palm and controlled the broken ice to change. In the end, each ice tip was 5 or 6 meters long and looked as sharp as a blade. Boom boom. Tangmao's thunder became more and more dense, and then he spun. Thunderbolt. With a loud shout, it was as if Pikachu released 100,000 volts. The lightning and thunder were instantly blasted into pieces and then absorbed by Tangmao in his domain. Ice Crystal Bow. Just as Tangmao broke the opponent's attack, Muningsu had already revealed her trump card. Now she is already a high level mage, and the backlash when using the Ice Crystal Bow is not as strong as before. Swoosh. An arrow shot out, breaking through the sky and heading straight for the executioner. The executioner had just fought with Tangmao and had not yet reacted. This sudden arrow really made him unable to defend. The most important thing is that it was too fast. Moreover, the damage was maximized and he had no chance to dodge. The next moment, he was directly pierced through the body by an arrow with a puff. After the arrow pierced his heart, the executioner turned into an ice sculpture. Tangmao suddenly appeared here, and a thunderbolt slashed down, and the next moment, the executioner was directly cut in half. After dealing with the executioner, Tangmao stepped out and came to Muningsu's side. Holding the bow, she still had that otherworldly feeling seeing Tangmao staring at her. Muningsu put away the bow and said, "I just want to help." Hearing Muningsu's explanation, Tangmao smiled and said, "I know, but how can you not trust your man?" "I didn't." When Muningsu wanted to say something, she suddenly felt her whole body go limp. Although the current ice crystal bow would not freeze her into an ice sculpture directly, however, the backlash power was still very painful. Looking at her appearance, Tangmao hurriedly opened the ice field and absorbed it for her. After some rescue, after confirming that Muningsu was not in danger, Tangmao called Aoluna to solve the problem here. After all, it was a battle on the streets of New York. Although it was self-defense, when using Thunderbolt just now, it still destroyed a lot of buildings. Even the streets were frozen by several ice-attributed forces, freezing a large area nearby. Moreover, Tangmao asked Aoluna to come because of the most important bounty. Tangmao's troubles were solved very quickly, and the Black Church probably didn't expect it. The executioner has been solved, and the people who were originally planning to rest in New York for a few days finally had to open the way. The Atlantic Ocean seems to be more blue and clean like an ice mirror. When there is no ripple, the white cloud silk sky can be completely copied. Tanoa is the most beautiful and mysterious city near the Atlantic Ocean in Portugal. It is also a gathering place for ocean hunters. Almost every hunter who wants to explore the Atlantic Ocean and get wealth from the ocean full of treasures will stop here, and at the same time, they will squander their wealth here overnight. Whether it is a seaside lounge full of beauties, some noisy casinos, or a magician's fighting field, there will always be endless luxury here. It was only afternoon. The warm sunshine was gracefully sprinkled on the sea level. The soft waves were like the skirts of girls, rippling in the sea breeze. At this time, a passenger plane was flying overhead and slowly landing in the coastal city of Tanoa. On the plane, Tangmao, who was sitting by the window, was overlooking this beautiful ocean city. Suddenly, he saw a huge skeleton. On the sea level, the ivory white huge creature was getting closer and closer to the harbor. Even if you look at it from above, its body shape is still a bit amazing. Looking at it like this, it still feels like it has occupied the entire eyeball. The skeleton is very complete. Through its skeleton, you can roughly imagine its fierce and domineering appearance when it was alive, and you can also imagine that it must be a hegemon that can run rampant in the sea. At this moment, the creature turned into a skeleton, floating here like a discarded bottle, a garbage can, or a rotten wood. Any experienced wizard would be paralyzed with fear, because even if it is a skeleton, a dead thing, it still carries a heart-pounding pressure and threat. Its hideous head, that needs to be looked up, and its skeleton, that is comparable to a giant ship. The most terrifying thing is, what on earth turned such a sea overlord into a skeleton, and how terrible must the thing that killed it be? Jiang Shaoxu, who was standing next to him to show off his beauty and ferocity, saw Tang Mao staring outside, and said with some dissatisfaction, "What are you looking at? Is the scenery outside more attractive than what I show you?" Tang Mao said without changing his expression, "There is a huge animal skeleton below, and judging from its size, it must be at least a runner-up master level existence." What? When Tang Mao said this, several people were surprised. After learning about this, everyone got off the plane and rushed to the port. As the sea breeze blew, a strange smell could be faintly smelled from the huge skeleton, which was spreading throughout the small port. At this time, the wooden boardwalk at the port was already full of people. They had never seen such a scene before. For a while, all kinds of terrible rumors gradually brewed in the horror of these people. It is believed that it will spread throughout the streets and alleys of the city of Tanoia in a short time. This is indeed a bit big, even a bit exaggerated, right? Zhao Manan looked at the huge skeleton in front of him, his mouth almost long enough to swallow an egg. When they were sitting on the plane and looking down, they just thought it was a boat, and no one thought what Tang Mao said was true. But when they arrived in front of it, they found that what Tang Mao said was not false at all. Chapter 302 The Mystery of the Drowning Curse. Nanju looked at the thing in front of him with some confusion, and then said, "How could a creature of this level be turned into this state? The skeleton seems to be very complete, but there is not a drop of blood or a trace of flesh on the body, let alone the internal organs." Seeing that everyone was a little confused, Jiang Yu began to explain, "This should be a sea mammoth. Its head and upper body are like those of an ancient elephant, but its lower body is a whale body. It usually lives in the open sea and deep sea. It is not a sea beast or sea monster that likes to harass humans, but it is an extremely tyrannical creature that many ferocious sea monsters have to avoid. This thing needs to eat more than a dozen sea monsters a day to maintain the normal function of its body, and it always eats them alive. They also have another title, that is, ship killers. According to historical records, there are at least 80 luxury ships destroyed by the sea mammoth. And they are all the kind of ships that are full of mages. The ship's ability to withstand is comparable to that of commander level creatures. After Jiang Yu's introduction and the time of its death, several people were extremely puzzled. At the same time, they were full of praise for Jiang Yu. It was really nice to be able to guess what it was just from a corpse, and to be able to guess its time of death by following the clues. However, it was also because of this that Zhu Jiaming and others proposed to end the challenge of the National Pavilion as soon as possible and leave here. The tragic death of a creature close to the monarch level, doesn't it mean that there is a real monarch near the city of Tanoia, or a bloodthirsty, meat-eating brutal monarch? There are not many people interested in the National Pavilion. For example, Mu Ningxu, Jiang Shaoxu, Mo Fan, and Jiang Yu are all very interested in this skeleton. And Jiang Shaoxu also wants to know more about this skeleton. Helplessly, Tang Mao was also pulled together and joined the Linu Pier. As for the National Pavilion, AI Jiangtu and others are them. AI Jiangtu was originally a trump card and didn't shoot easily, but now it seems that there is no need. After all, there is no shortage of monsters in China. After everyone separated, Tang Mao found out what this thing was. Wasn't it the drowning curse he encountered in Tokyo before? Moreover, Tang Mao contacted Lingling as soon as possible. He remembered that it was the little girl Lingling who broke this mystery. Moreover, this thing is not a scary demon, but just a parasite. Of course, it is scary, because even a monarch may be deprived of his life. Although the monarch who was deprived is still a monarch creature. but in fact, it has changed into a different kind of soul. This thing is scary, but it is also useless, because it changes when it encounters something. Moreover, the reason why some humans died inexplicably is because of this little thing. This parasite is very small, and it can even be said that it is impossible to notice it normally. After talking to Lingling, Tang Mao found Bobby, whose two brothers had just died, with the identity of a hunter master. Drowning curses appear all over the world, but no matter how high the probability is, it will not happen twice in the same person's home. It can be said that this buddy is quite tragic. After Tang Mao arrived, he told him that he might be able to solve the mystery of the drowning curse, but the method would be cruel. If he wanted to find the murderer, he had to cooperate. If he didn't want to, then it was up to him. The cruel method was actually to dissect the body. Someone had done this before, but his IQ was not as good as Lingling's, and he didn't have any halo. Obviously, the person who dissected the body didn't find anything. In the end, it had to be left unresolved. After Bobby learned what Tang Mao said, he was unwilling to do it, but he didn't want his two brothers to die in such an unclear way, so he agreed to Tang Mao. Not long after, Lingling arrived here. At this time, this place had been isolated by Tang Mao using space magic. Bobby saw a little girl walking in and thought she was a mistake. He stood up in a hurry and blocked the way, saying, "Little girl, don't come in. Here, she is the partner I found. Don't underestimate her. Except that she hasn't awakened magic yet. Her ability is already better than that of a master hunter." Hearing the voice outside, Tang Mao came out. After seeing Lingling, he explained. Hearing what Tang Mao said, Bobby instinctively felt that he was fooled? However, when Lingling went in, her eyes, which were shining with wisdom that didn't match her age, stared directly at the bloody scene. Without any panic, he was silent again. She moved closer, stirred the basin of sticky blood with her fingers, and then slightly lifted the dead Noko's face and examined it carefully. Bobby was dumbfounded, looking at Lingling in astonishment, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. "What is this?" Lingling pointed to some strange debris on the edge of the iron basin and asked in confusion. "I don't know." Tang Mao shook his head. "Call a skilled master to dissect his body." Lingling paused and continued. Because Tang Mao had made arrangements in advance, Bobby did not have much emotional fluctuation. After a while, Lingling and the invited master were dissecting inside, while Tang Mao and the other two were in a daze in the yard. After a while, Lingling came out and thought for a moment before she told the result of her discovery. Nuoko's body is extremely weak, like a person who has not eaten much for more than 10 days. The reason why he looked no different from usual when he was alive was completely because of the illusion of swelling due to excessive water in his body. How is this possible? Bobby screamed. He clearly remembered that his brother had an extremely big appetite before he died. He obviously ate so much. How could it be like what this little girl said? How could the body be like a water-filled empty shell? This is completely contrary to common sense. "I think we have a clue," Lingling said suddenly with a bright look in her eyes. As she spoke, Lingling had already run into the house and took away the basin full of blood. Bobby was a little puzzled, and Tang Mao followed her in. Then, according to Lingling's instructions, Tang Mao found a filter and did as she said. Holding the filter, she began to pour the basin of blood onto the filter. The sticky blood flowed down the gap of the filter, and Bobby, who was watching, felt complicated and indescribable. This little girl was too tough. He, a mage, was scared to death when he saw the bloody scene, but how come this little girl was fine? The blood kept pouring down, and no one spoke. Suddenly, something was found to be moving on the filter. This thing looked like a blood clot, but it was a little soft. It seemed that with a little force, it could be squeezed through the filter. Bobby pointed at the moving thing in surprise and asked, "What is this?" "Don't move it. This thing is very fragile. Once it leaves the liquid, it will die quickly," Lingling immediately explained. "Go get some more water," Lingling then ordered. Bobby quickly got her some water. Lingling poured the water over the blood clot to clean it. Strangely, as the sticky blood washed away, the blood clot seemed to melt and disappeared on the filter. Bobby was puzzled. Just as he was about to speak, Ling Ling said, "It's still there. Look carefully." Tang Mao and Bobby lowered their heads and looked carefully. Finally, they found a completely transparent little maggot on the original position of the filter. The body of this thing is as soft as a jellyfish, but more transparent than a jellyfish, almost invisible to the naked eye. Its shape is similar to that of a maggot, and it is slightly larger than a thumb. Chapter 303 The Terrible Parasitic Demon. Could it be this little thing that killed my two brothers? Bobby looked at the little thing in front of him with a depressed look. If you don't observe carefully, you can say that you can't see its existence at all. Is this a parasitic demon? Tang Mao looked at the little thing in front of him, paused and said, "This is the first time I've seen this thing. It would be great if Jiang Yu was here. He has done some research on all demons." Ling Ling shook her head and said, "It's normal that you haven't seen it. Besides, even if it's the person you mentioned, I don't think he would know much about it. It's still in a larval form. Only when it is in the ocean and has enough water as nutrients will it quickly grow into its true appearance. This is also the first time I've seen live jellyfish maggots. I can do a good study on it tonight." Ling Ling looked at the little thing in front of her and said with great interest. Bobby on the side was a little puzzled by this, and, more importantly, he was a little confused about this little girl. However, he couldn't help but ask, "Then my two brothers, is the drowning curse because of this? This jellyfish maggot can grow into any creature, including humans." Ling Ling nodded in response. Bobby and the autopsy master present were all horrified by this conclusion. Ling Ling said, "I need to study it carefully first and give you the answer tomorrow." When Ling Ling went to study the cause of the drowning curse, Tang Mao found Muningsu. Although Jiang Shaoxu also came, this girl went shopping early. No matter which country she went to, shopping was the most important thing, and everything else was nothing. Muningsu was very concerned about this matter. Of course, she didn't come here to punish evil and promote good. It was just because she needed resources and income now. She didn't know how much the bounty of this drowning curse was, but Muningsu was sure that if she solved this matter, she would definitely get a lot of income. So, compared to other team members, she was extremely concerned. When Tang Mao came to see her, she also learned some news that was not very useful. When she told Tang Mao, Muningsu was still a little embarrassed. After all, after she told Tang Mao these news, she didn't find that Tang Mao was interested in anything. "I'll go find out." Muningsu looked at Tang Mao and asked softly, "No need?" Tang Mao shook his head and refused. "I don't want to rely on your funding alone. You need more than me, right? AI Jiang 2 has already upgraded the space system to the second level a few days ago." Muningsu didn't want to be a burden to Tang Mao. It can be said that what he gave for Muningsu may not be able to repay for several years or even more than 10 years. She really didn't want to owe Tang Mao anymore. My ice system is also the second level, and, except for the wind system, all my other magic systems have reached higher levels. Tang Mao never concealed anything from his woman. Of course, he didn't tell her about the demon system. In addition to Tang Yu who knew it clearly, other people only knew a little about Ling Ling and the others. In addition, no one else knew anything. Sometimes I'm really curious about how you practice. Mo Fan was enough to surprise me before. But after hearing what you said, I feel that you are more abnormal. Muningsu looked at Tang Mao with a little surprise in her beautiful eyes. Heartless, don't think about anything, just practice. Of course the speed is fast. Muningsu naturally didn't believe what Tang Mao said. However, everyone has their own secrets. Since he didn't want to say it, she naturally wouldn't ask the bottom of it. "Okay, come with me. There are more professionals coming for the drowning curse. When she finds out, we can go kill monsters." Seeing that she didn't speak, Tang Mao smiled and then said. Muningsu didn't expect Tang Mao to have a frown on his face. Although she was surprised, she still nodded and said, "Okay." She knew what Tang Mao meant by coming here. Didn't he just want to take her to do the bounty together? Tang Mao needs help. Muningsu knew very well that he came to call her, but just to give her a chance to get resources with peace of mind. But what Tang Mao didn't know was that, for her, even if she couldn't do the reward, Muningsu had already accepted everything. Just like now, she was actually supported by Tang Mao, and the resources of the government were not enough. She was not the kind of woman who was both a bitch and a saint. She could barely persuade herself the first time, but she couldn't recognize the world the second and third time. This is why later, even if Tang Mao was too much, even occasionally harassed her, she didn't have much resistance. In the evening, when the two came to Bobby's residence, the moment Bobby saw Muningsu, he was stunned. This was the first time he met such a beautiful woman. However, although he was amazed, he didn't think too much, because he knew that the goddess in front of him was not someone he could understand deeply. He just said hello lightly, arranged a place to stay, and left to rest. Around midnight, Lingling called Tang Mao and Bobby out again, and Tang Mao also called Muningsu out. Lingling was studying the jellyfish, so she didn't know Muningsu was here. However, the few people didn't matter to her. She was more concerned about the source of the drowning curse. When she arrived at the beach, she had a very small tablet in her hand with a red dot in the center. "What are you doing?" Bobby saw Lingling open the box and put the completely transparent jellyfish maggot into the seawater. He exclaimed. The jellyfish maggot was so transparent that it was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye when placed on the hand. Once placed in the water, it completely merged with the seawater. Lingling responded calmly. The reason why those who died from the drowning curse did not have any signs of poison, parasites, or curses on their bodies is that once these jellyfish maggots are put into the water, they cannot be seen at all. Tang Mao frowned and then asked, "You mean, in fact, everyone who died from the drowning curse has these maggots in their bodies?" They were under some kind of mental control and drowned in the seawater. Soon these maggots swam out of these dead bodies and entered the ocean? Yes, in fact, many maggots are much larger than this one. Those who died from the drowning curse will become wilted in a short period of time, as if all the energy in their bodies has been drained. It is precisely because these maggots that have absorbed a lot of nutrients have left their bodies that all the nutrients in their bodies have been completely drained, so it becomes that terrible scene. Lingling nodded and explained. First of all, this kind of evil maggot is a very scary parasitic demon. They live in seawater. As small as some plankton, it is easy to enter the body of a living thing. For example, from the human mouth, nose, and ears. It should be that in the earlier period, this kind of evil maggot has not appeared in the human body. It is only in recent decades that this kind of evil maggot lurking in the human body has gradually evolved. The evil maggot enters the human body, adheres to the vicinity of the stomach, and frantically absorbs human nutrients and food. Therefore, those who are cursed by the drowning curse begin to have a great increase in appetite, which is actually equivalent to not only absorbing their own energy, but also feeding the evil maggot embryo in the body. The embryos of the evil maggots are becoming more and more mature in the human body. They are no longer satisfied with food, nor are they satisfied with this kind of stealthy absorption of energy in a small host. They need to replenish themselves in the vast ocean. At this time, the evil maggots begin to eat away at the human body, extracting most of the important body functions of the human body to themselves, which is considered a stock for the sea trip. Then, these terrible little things will issue a kind of mental control to the people who are cursed by the drowning, forcing them to go to places with water, especially the ocean. Once they reach the ocean, the fat evil maggots will drill out of the human body. This drill can be said to instantly drain all the energy in the body of the drowned person. Then they will die and wilt in just a few seconds, and then these transparent evil little devils will swim into the sea at ease and start their new life. Lingling described all the processes of these little demons in detail. After listening to Lingling's story, Tang Mao, Muningsu and Bobby all felt a tingling sensation on their scalps. Chapter 304, Nearly 400 million bounty. While operating the notebook, Lingling said, "I have analyzed it carefully. This kind of jellyfish evil maggot is divided into two forms. The first form is the parasitic hatching period I just described to you. The jellyfish evil maggots in this period are actually quite weak. They will die if they are hit by a little bump, and their survival rate in the human body is not particularly high. Therefore, even if a jellyfish evil maggot swims into the human body, it does not necessarily mean that they are under the drowning curse, and they will not necessarily die. But the jellyfish evil maggots that successfully reach the stage where they can control their human mind are similar to the late stage of cancer. There is basically no cure. Killing the evil maggots will instantly drain the body of the person under the drowning curse. Not killing the evil maggots is equivalent to committing suicide by rushing to the ocean. The second form is what they look like after they control and kill a parasite and enter the ocean. They are actually equivalent to a baby that has just hatched from an egg. They need to gradually hunt and grow before they can become a complete form. After listening to Ling Ling, Tang Mao said in confusion, "Since you already know, why don't we just solve it directly? Well, let it go." Ling Ling shrugged. "I have analyzed the jellyfish maggot larvae. They don't have any vaccine tissue, so I guess that only after they have experienced the second form and grown into a complete body, they may have that kind of vaccine tissue." Muningsu immediately understood what Ling Ling meant and said, "If we can extract the vaccine tissue, let the International Magic Association immediately inject this vaccine in major countries. Then from now on, no one will be parasitized by this kind of maggots, and no one will die from the drowning curse." After Muningsu finished speaking, Ling Ling nodded. She was a little curious about this. Where did Tang Mao find such a super think tank? Moreover, he was able to analyze such a complicated international drowning curse incident so clearly. At such a young age, his IQ is too high, isn't it? Ling Ling tapped on her notebook and said, "I have injected a tracking mark into it. No matter where it swims, I can accurately find its location. And what we have to do next is the most difficult part." Bobby asked in confusion. "We track it?" "Tracking is much simpler than this. Next, we must ensure that this evil maggot with our tracking mark can grow up healthily." I just said that this evil maggot is scary, but it is actually very fragile without the host. The mortality rate of this kind of evil maggot that swims into the ocean by itself is very high, and only a few can evolve to a complete form. So, next, we not only have to track it, but also protect it, and ensure that it can grow up safely. Ling Ling shook her head, and said with a smile, looking at the innocent face of the little girl, with an expression without any joking intention. The three of them were stunned. Killing monsters is not difficult, but protecting a monster to grow up safely? This job is simply difficult. It must be said that the task proposed by little Ling Ling is indeed a bit difficult. Tang Mao and Muningsu were better off. After all, Ling Ling had said that they needed to wait until it grew to its full form before they could find a solution. Otherwise, humans would still be in trouble. After all, the two of them had traveled around the world and had some experience. However, Bobby was different. After hearing what Ling Ling said, he exclaimed, "Instead of killing this thing, we actually have to take care of it like a nanny." "Are you kidding me?" Ling Ling turned around and said seriously, "As I said just now, basically only after they become complete can we get vaccine data. Now this evil maggot is the only one we can track, and the only specimen that can get the antidote. It is really very difficult to catch one like this time. We don't know who will be cursed by the drowning curse, and we can't detect who has the evil maggots. The final death happened too suddenly. We can't wait at the beach for 24 hours. Even if we do, these transparent little things will disappear as soon as they touch the water. It is impossible to completely control it like this time. I want to ask, does this thing grow fast? What if it takes several months or years to become a complete form? Don't we have to spend so much time protecting it?" Bobby asked again with a headache. "That's not necessary. This thing has actually been brewing in Jizhang for a long time. After they swam into the ocean, they grew very fast. According to my estimation, if it grows smoothly, it will become a complete form in less than half a month." After saying that, Ling Ling looked at Tang Mao and the others again, and then said to Tang Mao, "You need to ask for leave from the national government team. I hope you can do this job well. You know how difficult it is, but if you succeed, we will not only get a huge bounty and gain the attention of the International Hunters Union, but also save more people who will die tragically in the drowning curse in the future. I have checked some information. The incidence of the drowning curse is getting higher and higher. This kind of evil maggots that can survive in the human body must be solved no matter what. It is almost impossible to eliminate them. The only solution is vaccine." Tang Mao naturally didn't take the bounty or not very seriously. Saving those humans in the world who are about to die is his real intention. Then, Tang Mao looked at Ling Ling and asked very seriously, "By the way, how much is the bounty now?" Ling Ling looked at Tang Mao with disdain, but she immediately searched it out and responded, "There are a total of 1,325 bounties for the drowning curse around the world. Many of them were posted by the relatives of the victims of the drowning curse, and some were posted by the governments, associations, research institutes, charitable families and the like at the place where the incident occurred. The total amount is 378.7 million. Oh, a few people just posted a bounty, and it has accumulated. Now it has become more than 390 million. What are you waiting for? Saving the world is a duty." Tang Mao immediately became interested and responded immediately. "Moreover, if we complete the task, we may be able to collect 400 million. This is a huge income, 400 million. Even if I give half to Muningsu, I will still have 200 million. Of course, Muningsu may not want it. If we collect more of these 400 million, it will be enough for Tang Mao to buy a wind soul seed. Count me in. I'm most familiar with the ocean. No matter what, I will not let this little devil that killed my 2 brothers continue to spread like this. I will definitely, anyway, I will keep a close eye on it." At this time, Bobby also spoke. Chapter 305 Tracking. Bobby was actually in a dilemma. He wanted to crush this broken thing to death, but he turned out to be the bodyguard who killed his 2 brothers. However, reason told Bobby that the little girl with the very high IQ was right. It was meaningless to crush this evil maggot of the drowning curse. A solution to the global drowning curse must be found. In this way, even his poor brother can be comforted in heaven, right? When Tang Mao heard this, he said very seriously, "I tell you, this is a dangerous thing. If you follow it, if this thing parasitizes a commander level or monarch level demon, it will be a terrible disaster. You have to think it through." After hearing what Tang Mao said, Bobby curled his lips and said, "Don't worry, I won't take the bounty. I just want to comfort my brother." Although the clues were obtained by dissecting his brother, but after all, he was someone else's person, and he had no reason to share a piece of the pie. Moreover, from beginning to end, he just wanted to know the answer to why his brother was cold. We can't let everything be so unclear. Muningsu and Ling Ling didn't say anything about Tang Mao's behavior. After all, this was the Tang Mao they knew. At this time, Ling Ling, who was staring at the computer, said, "It has already swam out of the sea for more than 1 kilometer. This is still the Anji Sea. There won't be any monsters. Once we are out of the Anji Sea, we must always be vigilant." Hearing this, Bobby immediately said, "I'll prepare a speedboat. You wait for me at the beach." Not long after, Bobby found a speedboat. The 4 of them quickly got on a speedboat and quickly chased the drowning curse evil maggot in the direction Ling Ling pointed. The speed of the drowning curse evil maggot was not particularly fast. Their boat always kept a distance of less than 500 meters from it. If it dived into the deep sea, Bobby, as a water mage, would also dive with it. Bobby majored in water, an ordinary mid-level water mage, without even a spirit seed, but he was obviously very familiar with water, so it was best for him to follow the drowning curse evil maggot closely. Although Tang Mao was not weak in water combat, he was not good at diving into the deep sea. The frozen sea was his style. But if he froze this weak bastard, it would be frozen instantly. Then the specimen would be gone instantly, so he could only choose to wait on the boat. Of course, Tang Mao was not idle either. After all, Muningsu was sitting next to him. If he sat honestly, it would still be him. Although Muningsu did not reject Tang Mao's frivolousness, Ling Ling was right next to her, so she was somewhat resistant. Ling Ling stared at the computer screen and had no intention of observing Tang Mao at all. It was just that when she was kicked in the buttocks by someone's foot occasionally, she would glare at Tang Mao in shame and anger. The 2 women were very angry about Tang Mao's shamelessness. At the same time, they were afraid that the other party would know about these shameful operations and pretended to be nothing. During this period, Tang Mao reported to AI Jiang 2. After learning the cause and effect, AI Jiang 2 supported him in doing this. Of course, Tang Mao did not mention the reward at all. The members of the Guofu team were also stunned after hearing the news from AI Jiang 2. They couldn't believe that this was something Tang Mao could do. You know, this thief's son has always been a profit seeker. Even Munagyo and Jiang Shaoxu thought that this bastard took Muningsu with him to capture her. But no matter what, they could only curse in their hearts. After all, they couldn't go to Tang Mao now. Especially Munagyo. She said that she would ignore this bastard. Of course, she was talking about saying one thing and thinking another. Tang Mao didn't care what they thought. After saying something to Ai Jiangtu, he concentrated on accompanying the two women. During this period, they naturally encountered some troubles when following the specimen. However, they were all easily solved by Muningsu. Admiring the beauty of Muningsu swimming, Tang Mao only felt a desire to pee. Unfortunately, the place didn't allow it, so he could only pat his butt and give up. Of course, he was definitely not patting himself, and because of this, he was given a cold shoulder by Lingling. The sky was light blue, but the ocean was gradually getting darker. One could feel that there was something unusual about the ocean. Looking around, Muningsu whispered, "Why is the seawater getting darker?" No one responded to what Muningsu said. Tang Mao didn't know much about the ocean, and Bobby was a little tired, too tired to talk. As for Lingling, she stared at the computer and said, "The evil maggot has already transformed once. It should have gained a lot of benefits when it encountered those sea monsters before." Tang Mao hugged Muningsu, warming her up, and said, "It's because we protected it well, otherwise it would have turned into air just now." Lingling nodded in disbelief. At this time, Bobby looked at the distance and said hurriedly, "It seems that there is a reef ahead." People who often go to the seaside can judge the reef through experience. When the speedboat gradually approached, Tang Mao found that the reef was actually very large, and it was completely a reef island covered by seawater. The seawater was not deep. When the ship approached there, Tang Mao could even jump up and stand there. The water surface was only up to his knees. This seems to be a reef cave. Bobby observed carefully and then spoke. Seeing that Tang Mao and Muningsu were a little confused, Bobby continued to explain. Many marine creatures actually need a nest similar to a cave, a stone cave, or a grotto. In some specific places, there will be a large area of sea reefs, like an island, but it is not exposed on the water like an island, but is completely hidden under the water. This kind of naturally formed huge reef island often becomes a nest of demons, even demons of different races, so this kind of place is also called a sea monster castle by us. Tang Mao and Muningsu nodded subconsciously, looking like they would learn, until they grow old. Lingling acted as if she knew everything and said, "This reef cave is quite large. There is a large group of sirens sleeping soundly about 500 meters underwater. We should be careful not to wake them up." Muningsu held her little chin and said, "That evil maggot came here to find the most suitable evolutionary form. I think there should be a very powerful race of sirens in such a place. If it can parasitize the body of that siren, it will become very powerful. P.S. I have accumulated several rewards of 10,000 yuan recently. I will stay up late today and update the article. Thank you." Chapter 306 Demon's Residence. Lingling nodded, looking at Muningsu with a look of "You're right." Then she continued, "But at the same time, this also adds a lot of difficulty to us. Once we are discovered sneaking around, we have to rush down to help resolve it. No way can people go down to this kind of place." Bobby heard this, and his eyes widened. He is just a mid-level mage. He wants to make some contributions, but he doesn't want to die yet. He knows how terrible the reef cave is. It is said that many first-line hunter groups dare not easily attack the reef cave. Now there are only a few of them. If they go down, wouldn't it be tantamount to sending themselves to death? Although Tang Mao looks very fierce, he is just a young man after all. Lingling said with certainty, "Of course we have to go down, otherwise we will fail." After responding, Lingling said again, "Bobby, can you roughly find out the types of sea monsters living in this reef cave?" Although Bobby was afraid, he still responded confidently when he heard his professional knowledge. "Yes, now those old hunter groups often recruit me to join the army, because my identification ability is better than many old sea hunters. Give me some time, I can conduct a detailed population census of this reef cave." Lingling was very satisfied, and at the same time, felt that this guy would be very useful. Then he said again, "Okay, then I'll leave it to you. I have to know what the real goal of the evil maggot is." The evil maggot is now an amoeba. Basically, what creature it catches will quickly become that creature in the next period of time and have the ability to be almost completely comparable to that creature. But every evil maggot should instinctively pursue creatures of higher racial levels. After all, no creature is willing to be at the bottom of the food chain. Moreover, its body is so weak and fragile. It is normal for it to yearn for strength. What Ling Ling needs now is to figure out what this evil maggot wants to become. Not long after, Bobby returned to the reef. Most of the people living in the 500-meter floor of the reef close to the sea level are ordinary marine creatures, and most of the ferocious sea monsters live in the floors below 500 meters, so if they stand on it, basically nothing big will happen. I checked it out. Bobby had a smile on his face. Looking at his appearance, Tang Mao didn't smile too much. After all, he remembered how this damn specimen could commit suicide. Bobby ignored all this and explained with a smile. Starting from the sea level, the reef caves below 500 to 1000 meters should be inhabited by sea monkey monsters. There are quite a lot of them, close to a tribe, but there should be no command level leader. They are scattered and basically a slum. The reef caves between 1000 and 2000 meters are inhabited by thunder squids. There are no less than 1000 of them, and there should be a command level leader. However, Bobby, who was originally smiling, looked a little unhappy when he talked about thunder squids. According to his many years of experience in the ocean, this is a group of creatures that is best not to be provoked. The lightning they release in the water is so dense that it can produce terrifying lightning storms. In the sea area, except for their race, other life will basically be wiped out. As for the high-end residential areas below 2000 meters, it is even more terrifying. Speaking of this, Bobby looked a little unhappy. Ling Ling asked in confusion, "You mean that guy?" Although Bobby didn't say it, she guessed it, based on the location and the color of the water nearby. Bobby nodded, and immediately began to gesture with his forehead and chest, praying to his god. Pray that this thing is not too crazy, it's better to be salty. Although Ling Ling looked a little bad, she still said calmly, "Let's take a break first." The evil maggot seems to have found a hidden place to sleep or wait for an opportunity to move. Although the Wuhei pseudo dragon in the deepest part is also very scary, with Tang Mao's perversion, they still have a chance to escape, even if they can't beat it. Most of the monsters that have a little relationship with dragons are very strong. Even if they are at the same level, they are superior. Pseudo dragons are monsters with dragon blood. For example, the lizard pseudo dragons in Jinlen Deserted City should be the illegitimate children of earth dragons and some giant lizards. Their strength is relatively strong among the commanders. The Wuhei pseudo dragon is a hybrid demon of a sea dragon and a thunderstorm giant crow. It has the cruelty and bloodthirstiness of a sea dragon and the cunningness and treachery of a thunderstorm giant crow. When it appears, the seawater in the 3-kilometer radius of the sea area often turns black. This black seawater is slightly toxic and can paralyze the nerves of living things, making the reaction ability of people and living things extremely slow, and the movements are also swaying, like being drunk. Tang Mao sighed slightly in his heart. He clearly remembered that the target of the damn evil maggots was the pseudo dragon. However, if Mo Fan and Muningsu can deal with it together, there is no reason why he and Muningsu can't deal with it. The sun shone down from the center, bringing with it the hot scorching sun. Some marine fish that need the ultraviolet rays of the sun to kill the skin bacteria have already swam to this shallow reef. From time to time, they would fly past Tang Mao's feet, and their scales sparkled in the reflection of the sun. Tang Mao was not very interested in these schools of fish. What he was interested in was the Wuhei pseudo-dragon below, and the specimen of the evil maggot. Buzz buzz buzz. After Tang Mao had waited for an unknown period of time, something similar to an earthquake wave suddenly surged up from the bottom of the ocean, and the solid reef caves below began to shake. The dark tide swept over, and the schools of fish that were originally basking in the sun were suddenly scared and scattered, running around like headless flies. Tang Mao felt numb at the back of his head. He could clearly feel that this force came from the bottom of the deep ocean. It surged so far away and there was such a clear vibration. What's going on? Bobby was sleeping on the ship. He jumped up suddenly when he heard the noise. Obviously, he was still very security conscious. We are in trouble now. Ling Ling's face was not very good, and her voice was low. She was staring at the surveillance screen and responded. Bobby said with a hint of luck, "Could that evil maggot go and provoke those thunderstorm squids?" Ling Ling shook her head, and Bobby looked unhappy. Although she knew that this was terrible news, Ling Ling still said, "It is now at a depth of about 2,400 meters. The black pseudo-dragon should have noticed something and roared at the bottom of the sea to scare the invisible intruder. The seismic wave just now was the breath of the black pseudo-dragon. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 307 I Keep You, Just Because of a Boat. Hearing this, Bobby turned around and walked to the cab, ready to start the engine and leave. Of course, when he started the engine, he still reminded, "Let's go back and let it die on its own." If it was a thunderstorm squid, Bobby still thought he could give it a try. But facing the Wuhei pseudo-dragon, he didn't have the slightest fighting spirit. Seeing this, Ling Ling said solemnly, "We can't go back. The probability of catching live maggots is quite low. If we don't solve it this time, the number of deaths from the drowning curse will exceed 500 in a year, and it may increase to 1,000 in 2 years. Although it is said that someone will definitely extract its vaccine in a few years, it is also filled with the bodies of countless victims of the drowning curse in these years. In fact, it doesn't matter whether Bobby is here or not. After all, he is a mid-level wizard and can't really make any waves. It can be said that he is dispensable. But unfortunately, there is only one ship now. If Bobby leaves, then they can't get the specimens, and it will be a problem to go back. This is an endless sea. When Ling Ling said this, the determination on her face made Bobby stunned. Bobby couldn't imagine that such words could come from a little girl in her teens. It was as if this idea had been rooted in her heart for a long time, and she didn't hesitate or retreat when she said it. Seeing that Bobby paused, Ling Ling morally blackmailed him again. "Now we can indeed turn a blind eye and let this hidden danger go. But the people who will die from it in the future are evil. They may be a little girl with a father like you, or a healthy and ordinary family. If they are broken, sad and painful, because of this hidden danger we once let go, then we are no different from that guy's accomplice." Although this is indeed a bit too much. However, it has come to this point, and Ling Ling really doesn't want to give up. At this time, Tang Mao said, "Don't worry, it's just a pseudo-dragon. I've beaten it before." Hearing this, Ling Ling's dark eyes rippled. She knew that Tang Mao would never give up. Although Tang Mao had many problems, she never cared about them. Moreover, Ling Ling liked to partner with Tang Mao very much. After all, Tang Mao dared to break into any demon caves and monster caves, and dared to provoke any giant evil king. Ling Ling glanced at the computer and then immediately said, "Now the evil maggot is hiding in a hidden place and dare not move. But when the Wuhei pseudo-dragon relaxes its vigilance again, it will definitely parasitize it again." Muningsu paused and said, "We have to have a plan. We don't have a great chance of winning in the water against the Wuhei pseudo-dragon. After all, there are more than just Wuhei pseudo-dragons in the sea. Although both of them are very strong in ice, it is impossible for the other party to let you freeze 3 feet in such a large sea area, right? Moreover, the monsters living here will not watch everyone break and casually. You guys take your time to plan. I'm leaving first." Bobby curled his lips and said, as for their fighting spirit, Bobby just thought they were just hot-headed. This is not the hunter's justice, but the hunter's stupid death. Anyway, if he doesn't do it, the Wuhei pseudo-dragon can make him disappear with a glance, and he won't joke with his own life. As for this guy who wanted to run away, although Tang Mao understood his feelings, there was only one boat, so he really couldn't let him go. Tang Mao said, "You are a big man. Why are you panicking? It's just a pseudo-dragon, isn't it? I dare to take action, so I can guarantee your safety. Besides, if there was not only one boat, I would let you go." When Bobby heard this, he was even more unhappy. So the reason why he needed to stay was the boat? Question mark? He immediately said, "What kind of international joke are you playing? I know what a Wuhei pseudo dragon is better than you. How can a wizard like you who hasn't even grown all his hair deal with it? Just because you can't do it doesn't mean I can't do it either. Tang Mao lost his patience and said, I never joke with my life either. Just wait patiently, or you can choose to swim back by yourself. You. Bobby was a little angry. He found the boat. Okay. What does this kid mean? He wants to rob the boat in just a few words? Although he is a wizard majoring in water, he is just a mid-level wizard. Swimming back. What's the difference between that and committing suicide? However, the protest was obviously ineffective. Tang Mao acted like I have the biggest fist, I have the final say, if you don't agree, you can hit me. This really pissed Bobby off, and he snorted angrily. He turned his head and looked to the side. At this time, Muningsu also said to Bobby softly, Bobby, you should have seen our strength when you came here before. Commander level creatures are not invincible to us. Now you just need to help us lure the Wuhei pseudo dragon to the surface of the sea. It is not difficult to deal with only one Wuhei pseudo dragon. Moreover, I think you hate the drowning curse more than we do. If it is not solved this time, more people will end up like your brother. After Muningsu spoke, Bobby, who had just been firm in his belief, obviously wavered. For such a stunning beauty, not many people can calmly refuse, and Bobby is obviously not the one who can refuse Crowley. Moreover, what Muningsu said was not wrong. Along the way, he also saw some of the strength of Tang Mao and Muningsu. However, they only encountered some sea monsters of the general level. But the ones in this sea are not as simple as the demons of the general level, but commanders. Moreover, there is also a pseudo dragon among them. But maybe because Muningsu has a face that is trustworthy, or because she is not so cold. In fact, in the hearts of most men, she is a dream lover who is hard to resist. Bobby is trying his best to adjust his emotions. At this time, Ling Ling looked at the computer screen and said, the evil maggots have started to act. Bobby, who was originally wavering, suddenly looked at Muningsu, and then looked at Tang Mao and asked seriously, are you sure you can compete with the Wuhei pseudo dragon on the sea? In fact, even in the sea, it's okay, but if the pseudo dragon is solved, those thunderstorm squid tribes will also be a problem, so it's best to be on the sea. Tang Mao nodded and responded. He really didn't care much about this Wuhei pseudo dragon. With his current strength, even if the fire system cannot be used in the sea, the ice system, thunder system, wind system, space is still a magic turret. So he is not weak at all. Chapter 308, Inviting the Dragon to Fight. Caught in a dilemma, and with Muningsu's brainwashing attack, Bobby slowly calmed down and said, I do have a way, but I don't think it's much safer than going into the sea to fight the Wuhei pseudo dragon. Ling Ling stared at the computer and said without turning her head, let me tell you first, the evil maggot has already taken action. If we don't take any measures, it will die immediately if it is discovered by the Wuhei pseudo dragon. Isn't there a group of thunderstorm squids living in the reef caves at 1 to 2,000 meters? Bobby glanced underwater and said with a somewhat weak tone, thunderstorm squids are a group of violent and very sensitive creatures. Once they are threatened with sufficient strength, this group of thunderstorm squids with extremely poor insight will begin to release lightning. When other squids see the lightning, they will know that their companions are in danger, so they will release lightning together. Ling Ling's little brain worked extremely quickly, and she understood Bobby's intention at once. Immediately followed Bobby's meaning and said, scare the group of thunder squids and turn this entire sea area into a huge high voltage minefield. Although the Wuhei pseudo dragon also has some thunder, it will definitely not be able to withstand the violent electric field of so many angry thunder squids, and will leave the sea. Bobby nodded, and then said, when I explored before, I found that there was a commander among the thunder squids, and this commander may have just become a mother, and this period is the most unbearable. So we found the right time to disturb the commander of the thunder squid, and this sea became a thunder forbidden area. Ling Ling was even more excited, and immediately said, I will make an isolation zone to prevent this submerged reef from being conducted by lightning, and it can become a battlefield for you to deal with the Wuhei pseudo dragon. The submerged reef can be regarded as the best place for fighting. If Ling Ling can isolate it in advance, the thunder squid's lightning will not affect it. And then, there is only one pseudo dragon left, which is nothing at all. Then, everyone started to divide the work. Tangmao was responsible for stimulating the squid, Muningsu was responsible for attracting the dragon, and Lingling and Bobby were responsible for making the insulation tape to prevent the squid below from thundering too much. Before going into the water, Tangmao was no longer in a hurry to admire Muningsu's curves, but instead instructed, if there is danger, just run away. Protecting yourself is the most important thing. Yeah, you too, be careful. Muningsu nodded. After saying that, Muningsu went into the sea first. She swayed her body, and there was airflow around her, which moved the seawater to make her dive faster in the seawater. The surroundings were already dark. Not long ago, if you looked up, you could see a sparkling piece of water at the top of your head. It looked like the exit of a deep cave, and you could see the sun. Now even the top of your head was pitch black, and the light could not reach this depth at all. Next to it was a reef that led directly to the seabed. The huge shadows of the demons gave people a great psychological pressure, especially the pairs of bloody strange eyes that lit up from time to time in the reef caves, which were as dense as stars and chilling. Muningsu continued to dive deeper, and the seawater became turbid and dark. She knew that, after staying in this dark seawater for a long time, her nerves would be paralyzed and become extremely dull. This was already the deep sea territory of the Wuhei pseudo dragon. Muningsu, who was wrapped in the cold seawater and endless darkness, couldn't help but tense up. Diving further, Muningsu found that there was a huge hole in the reef cave. There was a tide surging out of the cave. Once some objects swimming in the deep sea reached the entrance of the hole, they would be blown away by the wind like a gust of wind. Lululu. A snoring sound like thunder came from the cave, and Muningsu's heart jumped. The tidal wave coming out of the cave turned out to be the snoring of the Wuhei pseudo dragon, which shows how huge the Wuhei pseudo dragon is. It's moving. Stay alert. Lingling's voice came from the communicator. Muningsu's heart was slightly hanging, and her eyes were fixed on the dark cave entrance. Ah. Suddenly, the water in the cave shook, and then a roar like an earthquake came out. Muningsu immediately felt a chaotic and turbulent undercurrent rushing towards her, and a large area of seawater was violently stirred. It's been discovered. Quickly attract the attention of the Wuhei pseudo dragon. Don't let it be killed. Lingling's voice said vaguely. Although it is high-tech, the distance between the two is now more than 2,000 meters away, and it's still under the sea, so it's impossible for everything to be clear. But Muningsu's hearing is good. After stabilizing her body in the turbulence, she immediately moved her mind and transformed into more than a dozen ice locks that flew towards the black cave. The front end of the ice lock was a spike. Muningsu saw that the ice lock she had flown straight out trembled noticeably, and it had obviously pierced the Wuhei pseudo dragon inside. But after a few seconds, Muningsu found that the originally taut ice lock loosened, and then a terrifying majestic black shadow appeared in the already turbid hole, with a pair of pupils like large spotlights shining fiercely, pointing directly at the tiny and soft Muningsu in the water. She felt a pressure, but there was nothing she could do. In order to protect the specimen, she could only come here to provoke. More than a dozen ice locks were piercing the black shadow, but the thick ice locks were like spider silk that was not worth sweeping, so weakly hanging on it. The deep sea pseudo dragon ignored it at all, but was extremely angry at the humans who dared to step into its territory. Muningsu didn't dare to have any intention of fighting. A vortex rolled up around her body, like a fast spinning propeller in the water, sending her to a higher place. The Wuhei pseudo dragon would never let go of the intruder. It was different from other dragons. Its wings were a pair of scaly fins. With a contraction and agitation, the Wuhei pseudo dragon swam out at an astonishing speed and chased Muningsu. On the other side, Tangmao, who entered the water later, also came to the nest of the thunderstorm squid, but there were too many of them. He couldn't find the main target of the opponent. He immediately connected to the constellation, and then the silent thunder death light exploded directly in this nest. The thunderstorm was so powerful that the thick lightning arc and more than a dozen purple black crazy dragons were dancing. The lightning and thunder blast swept all around, shaking the entire reef cave violently. The rocks rolled down, the fragile rock layers broke, and the calm sea water suddenly turned into a frenzied beast, rushing around. All the thunder squids that slept during the day woke up at once. and their eyes lit up like a sea of blue stars. Zzzz. Zzzz. Feeling threatened, the thunder squids, who had no idea of right or wrong, began to stimulate all the lightning power in their bodies, and released it madly in all directions. A series of brilliant pale lightning flashed by, hitting hundreds of meters away. The lightning was like a group of demons dancing wildly, and there was a thunderbolt every few dozen meters. The electricity intertwined with the lightning, and the lightning radiated with the lightning. For a moment, the sea area with a radius of 1 kilometer completely turned into a lightning hell. The sea monkeys living upstairs were in big trouble. After they saw the lightning rushing down from below like a huge army, they spread their limbs and swam wildly, fleeing to the sea in panic. But the speed of lightning transmission was too fast. Groups of sea monkeys were chased by lightning, and turned into nothing in an instant by the powerful thunder. Chapter 309 Mixed Doubles. However, although the sourness of the thunder was terrifying, with Tang Mao's ice and thunder duel fields activated, he could still withstand it even in this 100,000 volt sea area. A moment later, Tang Mao rushed to the sea surface in one breath and quickly entered the isolated shallow reef position arranged by Bobby and Ling Ling. And just after Tang Mao came up, he heard a roar sound, and after a roar, the sea level was agitated, and then the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon had also reached the sea level. It also injured the ruthless thunder and lightning and had to escape to the sea surface. Here it comes. Oh my god. Ling Ling and Bobby said at the same time. The reason why Bobby exclaimed was that he didn't expect the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon to be so huge. Question mark? He knew that there was a Wu-Hape pseudo dragon here, but he had never seen it before. This was the first time. But think about it, if he could see this kind of thing often and still survive, it would be really awesome. Bobby was so frightened that his eyes were dizzy. He unconsciously started to drive the boat with Ling Ling to a farther place. He had made up his mind. If Tang Mao and the goddess couldn't hold on, he would run away immediately without any delay. Even if the goddess was very attractive, compared with his life, everything was so unimportant. Muningsu was being chased by the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon. The Wu-Hape pseudo dragon had two very long dragon whiskers, and there was a black electric current between the dragon whiskers. Combined with the powerful breath of the Wu-Hape dragon, a black breath with lightning rolled over and hit Muningsu in the air. Tang Mao didn't care about avoiding lightning. He jumped up directly, came to Muningsu, and hugged her in his arms. At the same time, a burst of ice star map emerged, and a wall of ice condensed into a shield, resisting the blows of the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon. Although the ice shield broke very quickly, Tang Mao's drawing speed was not slow. Just when the two were about to fall, Muningsu immediately condensed an icicle on the sea. Tang Mao stood on the icicle, let go of Muningsu, then looked at the huge Wu-Hape pseudo dragon, and then took a step forward, and the silver constellation suddenly emerged. The next moment, Tang Mao appeared on the dragon's body. Fierce fist. 9 dragons. The next moment, Tang Mao punched it with a fierce fist, hitting its body at close range. Boom! The sound of the explosion immediately made the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon roar, and then the huge body suddenly shook wildly. It hated fire very much. Although this fire attack was only a mid-level magic, it was really powerful because of the soul fire. The Wu-Hape pseudo dragon was a little crazy with pain. Tang Mao was thrown out very quickly, but at the same time as he was thrown out, a high-level ice constellation was linked. Ice coffin. The next moment, an ice pillar appeared under Tang Mao's feet, and the magic was not finished. Tang Mao wrapped a layer of frost on the huge dragon body. Ice prison. 10,000 arrows of heavenly ice. While Tang Mao was entangled with the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon, Muningsu was not idle. She also completed her high-level magic. In terms of control, Muningsu, who has a domain, is not much worse than Tang Mao. At this time, where she pointed with both hands, tens of thousands of small ice arrows could be seen flying horizontally. Although the ice arrows are small, their number and power are not weak. The Wu-Hape dragon originally wanted to use its tail and arms to protect the vital parts, but Tang Mao's ice prison had fixed its limbs and the ice arrows had a freezing effect. Although it could not hit the Wu-Hape dragon's scale defense, it could make its scales brittle. Ice crystal spear. After Muningsu's first wave of sweeping ended, Tang Mao's second wave of sweeping came immediately. The high-level magic of the two is actually the same. It can even be said that Muningsu's magic was learned from Tangmao. However, due to the difference in strength, hers is only a small ice arrow, while Tangmao's is a long ice spear. Bang bang bang. Having been frozen once and bombed by the two people again and again, the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon was immediately covered with wounds. In the distance, Bobby, who was originally planning to run away, could already fit his fist in his mouth. He really didn't expect that these two people were so fierce. No wonder they dared to provoke the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon. The other party was simply suppressed. As for Lingling, she obviously didn't care about the fight between the two. She was still observing the situation of the specimen. The Wu-Hape pseudo dragon was extremely angry, and the roar shook the sky a little. Then a dark blue halo of destruction emerged. It was probably the sea dragon power of the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon. The halo spread outward, and the ice wall that originally imprisoned it was instantly broken. Breaking free from all the shackles, the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon opened its big black mouth and sprayed a mouthful of thick phlegm towards Tangmao. In an instant, it turned into an extremely thick water column and hit him fiercely. Tangmao showed disgust on his face. He was really disgusted by the attack of the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon. However, disgusting, he still made a defense at the first time. Ice prison. The ice column under his feet did not dissipate. At the same time, the ice walls around him formed a circle, protecting Tangmao in it. Bang! The water droplets hit him, and the impact made Tangmao shake his head. Fortunately, his defense was still quite strong, so he was not washed away. Seeing that the water column had no effect, the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon roared again. The next moment, it suddenly appeared in front of Tangmao, with its pair of heavy claws raised high. At the same time, when it raised its dragon claws, a wave suddenly rolled into the sky, and the turbulent waves turned into a larger sea beast claw, which was destroyed, and fell as the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon struck down. Tangmao saw that the beast had no reservations, so he immediately put on the black snake magic armor and directly compressed the giant shadow nails in space. However, these controls were ultimately unable to stop it. The next moment, Tangmao and Muningsu, who was also hit by the dragon claws, were each slapped away. Tangmao was better off, only suffering some minor injuries, but Muningsu was a bit tragic. At least a few ribs were broken. Seeing that his lovable cold beauty was injured, Tangmao was furious. Immediately, Tangmao's ice dual domains burst out directly. Under the cooperation of absolute zero and extreme cold ice, although the power released was not as terrifying as when they were combined, a large area was directly frozen. Frozen coffin. Swish. Bang. Swish. Chapter 310 Lingling's Perseverance. In the sky, ice coffins fell one after another. After all 5 coffins fell, the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon was instantly frozen. The powerful ice attribute power made it unable to move at all. Seeing this scene, Bobby didn't know how to describe his feelings at the moment. He really couldn't imagine that this young man would be so strong? This kind of ice control is definitely the best among some high-level middle-aged hunters, right? At this time, Lingling's voice suddenly came to his ears. The evil maggots are about to attack. Tangmao, who was a little angry, had just sealed its body and was about to attack again, but after hearing what Lingling said, he looked at the Wu-Hape pseudo dragon. He saw that the proud Wu-Hape pseudo dragon did have a strange phenomenon on its body, that is, its skin scales inexplicably shed and were gradually disappearing. Not only did the skin scales shed, but the flesh inside it also began to rot inexplicably. White things emerged from the rotten flesh one after another, jumping up and down inside. Looking at the scene in front of him, Tangmao felt a little sick. And maggots, that is, the previous form of the drowning curse evil maggots. At this time, Lingling's voice came out again. The Wu-Hape pseudo dragon couldn't move at this moment. Its body was completely frozen, and it was impossible to break free in a short time. Because of this, its flesh was inexplicably growing these white things like ants and maggots, constantly gnawing at it. That must be a bad taste. If it were usual, it would be able to kill all these things with a deep sea halo and a dragon breath, but it couldn't do it now, and could only watch its flesh being gnawed by these ant maggots. There were more, and more ant maggots, white like ant colonies and corpse maggots. Before long, the entire black Wuhei pseudo dragon actually lost its shiny dragon skin and dragon scales and turned into a monster with completely naked flesh. The reason why Tang Mao and Muningsu had been watching without taking action was because they were waiting for this moment. The specimen was about to take shape. At the same time, the two were each drawing constellations, ready to go big. The meat mountain of the Wuhei pseudo dragon was being reduced at a speed visible to the naked eye, just like a piece of fat meat thrown into the water of piranhas, and the meat became only a few bones in the scramble. Oh my god. Bobby, who was standing on the ship, had already exclaimed with a weak tolerance. The Wuhei pseudo dragon seemed to be decomposed. With the dense gnawing of the whitens and maggots, it became unrecognizable. Where was the domineering majesty of a pseudo dragon? Unlike Bobby's shock, Lingling seemed to have discovered a new world, and her eyes were full of satisfaction. Of course, this was also because Tang Mao and Muningsu were already brewing their own big moves. She believed that, even if the Wuhei pseudo dragon was intact, Tang Mao could definitely smash it into pieces. What's more, there was Muningsu, although this woman was the first time she met her. However, Lingling also knew something about her. The most important thing is that it can still come to this point without the strong support of the Mu family behind it, which is enough to gain Lingling's trust. As for the Wuhei pseudo dragon, it did not break free from the ice and was eaten by the creepy ants and maggots growing out of its body, making it lose more than half a circle. The speed of gnawing was getting faster and faster. I don't know how many layers of white stuff covered the body of the Wuhei pseudo dragon. The Wuhei pseudo dragon still showed signs of struggling at the beginning, but soon it had completely lost consciousness and completely turned into a piece of meat specimen. As the Wuhei pseudo dragon gradually left only a bloody skeleton, Muningsu couldn't help but cover her mouth. At this moment, she completely understood why she had seen such a huge skeleton before. It turned out to be the masterpiece of this little thing. Finally, after a moment, the entire Wuhei pseudo dragon was left with only a pile of white bones, without a trace of blood or flesh, and the empty skeleton was frozen in the ice. However, after eating the Wuhei pseudo dragon, the ant maggots disappeared. Tang Mao asked curiously, "Where are the ant maggots?" The ant maggots disappeared strangely. Tang Mao had never seen them. This strange phenomenon made Cheyenne unable to understand it with normal thinking. "Wait, we are waiting on the ship now. When the time is right, I will tell you where the ant maggots have gone," Lingling said. After hearing this, Tang Mao and Muningsu returned to the speedboat. At this time, the group of thunderstorm squids below no longer released lightning. The whole sea area finally regained its tranquility. However, when I thought that the Wuhei pseudo dragon disappeared just like that, I still felt something was wrong. There was a bad premonition lingering in my heart. Everyone stayed on the speedboat and waited quietly according to Lingling's instructions. During this period, Tang Mao couldn't help asking, but Lingling just said wait. In this regard, Tang Mao could only give her a spanking. This little girl was so naughty, and she was typical of someone who needed to be dealt with. After dealing with Lingling, Tang Mao was pulled into the cabin by Muningsu. They called it healing her wounds, but only the two of them knew what they were doing. Seeing Tang Mao taking Muningsu into the cabin, Bobby was envious. However, he didn't have too many thoughts. After all, he had seen everything that happened before. 3 days passed in a flash. During these 3 days, Bobby was almost miserable. After all, waiting is a boring thing, but when it was annoying, Tang Mao and Muningsu completely ignored him and Lingling. From time to time, Muningsu's beautiful and moving voice came out, which made him feel itchy. Of course, Tang Mao and Muningsu would not do anything deep. After all, the current task has not been completed yet. Lingling sleeps very little. During the 3 days of waiting on the ship, she only slept for 3 hours a day. Her eyes never left the computer, where she was testing the evil maggot, as if she was afraid of missing something. Tang Mao did persuade her, but the little girl just didn't listen. Finally, he could only choose to go along with her. There was no other way. He couldn't stand the little lolly's coquetry. The sky lit up again, and the bright red sun was just on a long flat cloud, forming a gorgeous picture above the sea level. Tang Mao woke up and walked to the deck and saw Lingling wearing a coat, squatting there quietly waiting. I couldn't help but feel a little emotional. After all, other girls of Ling Ling's age would probably get a little mad if they were asked to do some small housework, right? But this talented girl is conscientious, and even Muningsu admires her perseverance. P.S. The recent rewards and updates have been completed. I stay up late every day, tired. I feel depressed. Back quote. In addition, please subscribe, reward, and monthly ticket. Chapter 311, Dragon. Looking at Ling Ling, whose eyes were beginning to turn red, Tang Mao felt a little distressed. He sat beside her and gently patted her soft buttocks. Then he whispered, "Why are you fighting so hard? The evil maggots are right below and can't get away. This is the biggest bounty I have received so far. You know, I have no interest in going to school. I just want to be a hunter." Ling Ling looked at Tang Mao and responded seriously. Tang Mao held her in his arms, although Tang Mao had good intentions. There was no evil thought, but Ling Ling, who was familiar with him, pouted and said, "Don't hold me, I will fall asleep." Tang Mao naturally ignored what Ling Ling said. If she said she would not hold him, did he have to obey her? "It's okay, I'll just watch. You look very hard, and others can't enjoy this kind of treatment." Tang Mao responded disapprovingly. Ling Ling snorted softly. She was obviously dissatisfied with this treatment. After all, Tang Mao, this thief, is extremely BT. Knowing that she couldn't escape from this embrace, Ling Ling gave up resisting. When she turned back to look at the screen, she suddenly found that the evil maggot was moving and hurriedly reminded Tang Mao, "There is movement." Tang Mao snorted coldly. He had been impatient with this specimen for a long time. If it hadn't suddenly disappeared a few days ago, why would Ling Ling need to work so hard? Hearing Ling Ling's movement, Muningsu and Bobby, who were not sleeping very deeply, also came out. Think about it, in this place, where demons live outside the safe world, how can they sleep peacefully? Seeing Bobby and Muningsu also come out, Ling Ling said, "The evil maggot has begun to enter the complete form. The three of you go down to the water and wait now. The vaccine is mature and can be taken away." Finally done. Hearing this, Bobby let out a long breath, his face full of joy. He couldn't eat well and sleep well these days, so he was waiting to end and leave quickly. Although Tang Mao and Muningsu showed great strength, it was after all the Siren's lair, where humans were at a disadvantage. However, although he was a coward, this experience was definitely the most exciting for Bobby, and he could brag about it to the old hunters in the Hunter's Tavern for the rest of his life. The Wuhei pseudo-dragon, that was a ferocious pseudo-dragon, and he was lucky enough to participate in a bounty for killing a pseudo-dragon. Regardless of whether he took action or not, even if he was just watching the battle, not everyone had the chance to experience it. "I can go down and get it myself," Bobby asked confidently. When Bobby was about to go into the sea, Ling Ling suddenly said, wait a minute. Bobby was a little puzzled. Since the evil maggot had already become a complete form, he should quickly take the mature vaccine from it and hand it over to the Hunter Alliance. Before Bobby could ask, Ling Ling stared at the water, frowned and said, "It's swimming towards us." From her expression, it was obvious that things were not as easy as they thought. Beep, beep, beep. At the same time, the mini computer in Ling Ling's hand issued a warning sound, and it became more and more urgent, which just indicated that they were getting closer and closer to the target. The speedboat they were riding on was not moving, which meant that the evil maggot was approaching at a very fast speed. What a fast speed. Muningsu had been staring at the display just now, and found that the red dot tracking the evil maggot was coming towards them at an astonishing speed. Bobby stood at the edge of the deck, staring at the sea water below. He didn't think about why this thing suddenly sped up a lot, but just wanted to solve it quickly, to comfort the souls of the two brothers in heaven. Of course, the most important thing was that he really didn't want to stay here any longer. It was too exciting! Exclamation mark. The body of that guy is transparent, and it is difficult to see it clearly in the sea water. At present, he can only rely on Ling Ling's guidance. However, Bobby still stared at the sea water with full concentration to see if he could find some clues. In short, the damn evil maggot would never escape. Just when the red dot was about to approach, the blue water tide suddenly turned black. Bobby still didn't care too much. He found that a huge black shadow emerged in the deep sea water. The black shadow was still blurry at first, but as the black shadow approached the sea surface, Bobby couldn't help but take a breath. Compared with this black shadow, the small speedboat seemed extremely narrow. Before Bobby and others were shocked, Tangmao suddenly drew several ice walls on the hull. Bang! At the same time, under the sea level, the terrible black shadow and amazing power slammed into the front half of the hull of the speedboat, and the rows of fangs like big swords bit down. Fortunately, Tangmao acted in time, and the ice wall blocked the attack, so the few people only felt a surge of force, but other than that, there was no serious problem. Of course, the ice wall had already turned into fragments, floating in front of everyone's eyes. The waves rolled, and at this time, Bobby, who was about to go into the sea, and Muningsu, who was stunned for a moment, saw a black and majestic body. The small ship was simply vulnerable in front of the black body. How is this possible? How can there be another Wuhei pseudo dragon? Bobby said in shock. The one that attacked the speedboat was a Wuhei pseudo dragon, and its physique was very similar to the previous one. This was something that everyone had never expected. However, with Tangmao around, Bobby didn't push himself directly, but looked at Lingling in confusion. Where are the evil maggots? Aren't they swimming towards us? In his opinion, there must be something wrong with Lingling's instrument. But Lingling said very confidently, this guy is the evil maggot. When he heard that this pseudo-dragon was actually transformed by the evil maggot, not only Bobby, but even Muningsu was shocked. Muningsu could clearly feel the huge pressure brought to her by the monster in front of her. It was no worse than the real Wuhei pseudo-dragon, and it could even be said that it was exactly the same. However, when she thought of the worm that could be easily dealt with before, it suddenly became so powerful. This huge gap made her a little difficult to accept. Not to mention Muningsu, even Bobby was very puzzled. What a joke, a small thing that could easily kill a group of people suddenly became huge. Moreover, its strength was exactly the same as the demon it transformed into. He couldn't accept it. This kind of change is totally contrary to the laws of nature. Chapter 312, Ice Spin Water Dragon Drill. Regardless of whether Tangmao and the others could accept it or not, the evil maggot had already turned into a dragon. As if to show off its strength, the evil maggot pseudo-dragon opened its big mouth at the black hole and roared at everyone. Although this roar was deafening, it was not aggressive at all. It was as if it was demonstrating. At this moment, it already had all the abilities of the Wuhei pseudo-dragon. It could roam freely in this vast ocean, killing, eating, and making those poor sea monsters submit to its dragon power. And these few poor bugs who had been chasing it, in its view, were the first delicious meal after turning into a dragon. Tangmao was disdainful of its arrogant attitude and sneered, "It's just a small fish. Even if it gets bigger, what can it do?" While mocking, Tangmao's ice dual domains had been opened. The temperature dropped instantly, and the area centered on him began to freeze instantly. This time, he was at full firepower. As the ice penetrated deep into the seabed, many of the sea monkey monsters that had just survived a wave of thunder and lightning turned into ice sculptures and then exploded to death. As the saying goes, when gods fight, mortals suffer. Tangmao was unhappy with the Wuhei pseudo-dragon. When it opened fire, it was naturally not something that some slave-level sea monkey monsters could resist. They were the victims of this battle. The most unlucky ones were these weak chickens. It was obviously extremely cold, but they didn't dare to hide in the depths. Here, some may not die, but once they go down, the sea monkey monsters know that they will definitely die. After all, the thunderstorm squid that was angered just now, at this moment, it was really not friendly at all. Lingling, is the vaccine on its body? When Tangmao and the pseudo-dragon looked at each other, Muningsu looked at Lingling and asked. Her exquisite face showed unprecedented seriousness. Yes, its evil gall is the original evil maggot, so we must kill it and take its evil gall. Lingling called out. The evil maggot pseudo-dragon seemed to be able to understand human language. It looked down at the ship and the people on it and snorted heavily. The evil maggot pseudo-dragon, which also inherited the wisdom of the pseudo-dragon, already felt a little disdain. Before, it did let these humans slaughter it, but it was extremely weak at that time. And now? He is so strong that it is explosive. Okay, a few humans are not its opponents. Although this guy swallowed the pseudo-dragon, it obviously overlooked one thing. That is, although its current power is tyrannical, it forgot that if Tang Mao had not imprisoned the Wu Hei pseudo-dragon, how could it have had the opportunity to swallow the other party? The Wu Hei pseudo-dragon is not those humans who drowned to death. Even if it is in its body, it has a way to crush it. This kind of evil maggot is not invincible, nor can it succeed in swallowing anyone. During this process, if there are any elemental demons, they can be crushed easily. Moreover, once they reach the commander level, their reaction is extremely sensitive. It is rare that they will be swallowed by force. After staring at each other, the evil maggot pseudo-dragon began to attack. It couldn't wait to show its strength. Its tail was long and slender, and the end was even like a fishtail. But the fishtail was covered with scales and thorns, which could be opened like a fan. The evil maggot pseudo-dragon's tail was pulled out from under the seawater, and it soared into the air, and then it startled a blue halo of destruction, and heavily slammed down on the speedboat. At the same time, a silver light flashed around Tang Mao, and the blue halo of destruction that was originally bombarded was stopped in the air under the compression and control of Tang Mao's two space magics. Seeing this, Muningsu directly formed a high-level ice constellation seal. Swish. The frozen coffin was used and began to suppress the huge body directly. Tang Mao is not the only one who can use the 5 coffins. Even she can do it. On the ship, seeing that extremely difficult magic, after 2 students used it one after another, he suddenly felt that it was not that difficult, right? Of course, in fact, he also knew in his heart that it was not, that the 5 coffins were simple, but that the 2 were too strong and too evil. The Wu Hei pseudo-dragon, who had been arrogant for less than a minute, had turned into an iceberg on his huge body. It roared angrily, expressing its dissatisfaction with the sudden sneak attack of this human. Muningsu did not sneak attack, but when she was describing the magic, the stupid dragon did not defend, and even arrogantly wanted to resist this attack. In the end, it changed into this appearance. Of course, even if it was prepared, it would not be very effective. Under Tang Mao's double domain, the temperature here is almost freezing. Muningsu's domain power is originally connected with Tang Mao. Therefore, when her magic is performed in Tang Mao's domain, the power is increased several times. Freezing the evil maggot pseudo-dragon was naturally not a difficult task. At the moment, when Muningsu froze the evil maggot pseudo-dragon, Tang Mao's ice constellation condensed again. This time, he depicted a high-level second-level single-body magic. Ice rotating water dragon drill. But the constellations were linked together, and a huge ice crystal rotating ice drill emerged. Then, under the consumption of Tang Mao's large amount of ice magic, it rushed out like a launcher in an instant. The moment the rotating ice brick rushed over, the evil maggot pseudo-dragon opened its mouth and sprayed a strong water column. It seemed that it wanted to use this water column to smash Tang Mao's rotating ice drill. Sure. However, when the two collided, the water column of the Wu Hei pseudo-dragon instantly turned into water droplets and scattered in the sea. However, the power of the rotating ice drill was not offset at all, and it rushed directly to the huge body of the evil maggot pseudo-dragon. The next moment, a loud bang was heard, and the entire body of the evil maggot pseudo-dragon was turned into an ice sculpture in an instant. After freezing it solidly, the thunder domain immediately emerged, and then Tang Mao quickly drew the thunder constellation. After seeing that the evil maggot pseudo-dragon did not die after such a powerful blow, Muningsu also took out the ice crystal break bow. Now that she was like Tang Mao, she could use the ice crystal break bow as she pleased. After all, this thing could no longer hurt her. Silent Thunder Deathlight. Thunder Beam. Ice Crystal Break Bow. Tang Mao condensed a beam of thunder and blasted it directly, and Muningsu also drew the bow and pulled the arrow. 2 destructive elemental forces flew towards the evil maggot pseudo-dragon at the same time. Chapter 313. Income of 450 million. Tang Mao's lightning beam was a little faster. The shocking purple lightning instantly exploded on the dragon's body. The airflow directly penetrated the white clouds and the blue ocean. What was even more terrifying was the violent thunder and lightning that swept across. The destructive energy evaporated tens of thousands of tons of seawater, blasted the reef caves, and turned the dragon scales and dragon skin on the Wuhei pseudo-dragon into nothing, revealing bloodstains. After the skin and scales of the evil maggot pseudo-dragon were torn apart, it could be seen that its body was not full of dragon meat, but the white ant maggots that had previously gnawed the Wuhei pseudo-dragon. Those ant maggots were feeding back, thus forming the entire complete shell of the evil maggot pseudo-dragon. One by one, the ant maggots fell from the place where the evil maggot pseudo-dragon was injured by the thunder explosion. The evil maggot pseudo-dragon immediately changed from the black light shining and majestic just now to bloody and charred into pieces. This attack really hurt it. The evil maggot pseudo-dragon was a little panicked after being bombarded like this. It had no intention of fighting anymore. It could feel that, even if it grew bigger, it might just be a bigger ant in front of these two people. The arrogance before was instantly dissipated. If the heavens could give it a chance to start over again, it would definitely hide in the seabed. And just when it wanted to run, it found that, while the thunder element dissipated, a bone-trembling ice energy suddenly attacked? ? I saw that the arrow whistled and rolled up a terrifying ice storm, following the tail of the ice crystal arrow. The ice crystal arrow stuck to the sea water and split the ocean. The sea surface that was cut apart was even frozen into ice crystals after 2 seconds. The evil maggot pseudo-dragon had completely turned into a tail-breaking worm without a protective shell at this time, and fled in panic. The arrow caught up, and went straight through the back of the strong body of the evil maggot pseudo-dragon. The body of the evil maggot pseudo-dragon stiffened slightly, and then he saw that the dragon of the meat mountain turned into countless ice crystal fragments the moment the arrow passed through it. Snap. Just like a big ice sculpture being shattered, the ice crystal arrow continued to fly farther and farther, and everything it passed turned into ice crystals. The sea and reefs were not spared. The sea area, which was originally frozen 3 feet, was instantly reduced to a glacier. The Wuhei pseudo-dragon turned into blocky fragments and piled up into a valley. There was no sign of life, let alone the appearance of a ferocious pseudo-dragon. In the distance, Bobischan was about to hit the ice. For these two people, the only adjective he could think of was Avildos. Apart from that, he really didn't know what to say. After Tang Mao finished his attack, he walked over to get the vaccine for the specimen. As for Muningsu, she was panting there after that arrow. After retrieving the complete vaccine, the ice layer, without the support of magic, slowly melted into the seawater. Fortunately, the ship was well protected before, so the 4 people didn't have to waste energy when they went back. Bobby was in control of the speedboat sailing on the ocean, and his mood was pretty good. At least he had done something big for the benefit of society. Moreover, Tang Mao also promised to give him 10 million after the bounty was settled. Tang Mao was very short of money, but speaking of it, Bobby was also a great help. Moreover, he was tragic enough, so he naturally couldn't think of taking it all for himself. On the way, Bobby asked, "No one will die from the drowning curse anymore, right?" Hearing this, Ling Ling shook her head, and then said seriously, "All living things are in the process of evolution. Even if we have obtained the vaccine for the evil maggots, which can temporarily stop humans from being captured by these invisible parasitic evil maggots, the evil maggots, this terrible parasitic race, survives in the entire ocean, and they have not been completely eliminated. They can parasitize demons instead of humans. How many powerful demons are transformed by evil maggots like the Wuhei pseudo-dragon? It is difficult to count and find out. Perhaps one day in the future, another more terrible parasitic devil will appear in the evil maggot population, which can surpass the protection of the vaccine we found this time. Whether it is demons or humans, they are constantly getting stronger and evolving. Demons urge humans to unite and become stronger, and humans are also constantly killing demons and suppressing their numbers. In other words, in this world, whether it is humans or demons, natural enemies are impossible to be extinct. The real extinction is those populations and races that have stopped moving forward and can no longer adapt to this living environment and eventually become a page of history. Perhaps many years ago, humans were just livestock in the eyes of powerful demons, and they could be slaughtered and eaten at will. It was because of the endless race that magic technology, cities, and mages were derived, which allowed humans to compete with demons. But if humans stop here, one day, they will be completely replaced by terrible little devils like evil maggots, or they may be extinct by powerful demon races. The evil maggot race is impossible to be completely eliminated, and the vaccine obtained by Lingling can probably only keep people from being harmed by this drowning curse for some years. However, these are no longer what Tang Mao cares about. After all, he can only complete this because the bounty is more attractive. After returning, Tang Mao and Muningsu returned to the national government team. As for the vaccine, it was naturally handed over directly to Lingling. Lingling didn't care about things like bounties. The main reason is that she doesn't have much use for asking for money now. Not long after, Tang Mao received a message from the Hunter Union, informing him that his hunter title had been upgraded again, and he could get more privileges and information from the Hunter Union. At the same time, he saw the headlines in some news media, which were about the description of the drowning curse vaccine. Qingshan Hunting House solved the world epidemic curse, and won a huge bounty. Lingling attributed the title to Qingshan Hunting House, and became a low-key person, mainly because she was worried that, if her age was announced, it would cause a bigger wave. Think about it, those old hunter masters in their 50s and 60s are still analyzing the drowning curse incident, and they find that the drowning curse was solved by a teenage girl and a young man in his 20s. Where can they put their old faces? Qingshan Hunting House is already very famous in China, so it is not a big problem for such a big event to be attributed to Qingshan Hunting House. When the income was received, the bounty had reached nearly 450 million. With some funds in hand, Tang Mao is now a man worth nearly 600 million. This was getting closer and closer for him to purchase a wine-type soul seed with an attached domain. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 314 Return to the Team. After the two returned to the team, they were taken out by Jiang Shaoxu for questioning. What have you and Muningsu been doing these days? Tang Mao shrugged and then said, don't you watch the news? What news? Are you blaming me? Jiang Shaoxu stared at Tang Mao with some irritability and said very dissatisfiedly. That's why Tang Mao and Muningsu left together, and she was saved by Muningsu, so she was really embarrassed to cause trouble for her. Moreover, in Jiang Shaoxu's opinion, Muningsu must have been dragged away by Tang Mao. Even if there was anything, she was passive. There is no way. These days, debts of favor are really troublesome. I'm blaming you. Tang is that kind of person? Tang Mao seemed to be wronged, looking at Jiang Shaoxu and using civilized language. Seeing Tang Mao so angry, Jiang Shaoxu laughed. I don't know what's wrong with her, or whether she's mentally ill. She actually believed it. I care about you. She offered her tenderness, shook Tang Mao's arm and said, then why don't you take me with you? Tang Mao curled her lips and said with disgust, when we went to complete the bounty, you were there. What were you doing? Didn't you know what was going on? Although she looked disgusted, her hands were honest, not to mention, although the cold beauty is very pitiful, she is not as good as Jiang Fox, making Tang Mao want to push her all the time. But this little girl is really not someone who can be fucked casually, at least before the end of the world government competition. Tang Mao feels that she needs to keep her virginity. Jiang Shaoxu pouted and retorted, it's because you didn't call me. You still blame me? Do you blame me? The two debated for a while, but Tang Mao took all the blame for the cheating in the middle. However, it's true that the feeling of that little hand fiddling with her is quite stimulating. At least it's many times stronger than his own five-fingered girl. Even the time is shortened a lot. It's not that he's useless, but Tang Mao feels that this little girl must have watched a lot of movies recently, and she must have wasted a lot of bananas, cucumbers, etc. After the two of them came back from their quarrel, half an hour had passed. The others had the opportunity to say hello to Tang Mao, and Tang Mao responded one by one. Of course, there were also those who ignored Tang Mao. For example, Guan Yu, Zhu Jiming, and Munijiro, who treated him coldly. She was really enthusiastic about Muningsu, but for herself, she almost ignored him, as if she was an eyesore. Tang Mao just shrugged helplessly. He was prepared for this. His mental acceptance was quite strong. Boss Tang, don't tell me that you left during this time to solve the drowning curse of that world. At this time, Zhao Manan came over and asked Tang Mao with a serious face. How do you know it was us who solved it? Tang Mao paused. You know, the media had just started to spread the news, and Ling Ling reported it as Kingshan Hunting House. Zhao Manan looked at Tang Mao with some displeasure, as if he was looked down upon. He glared and said, nonsense, the only ones who are actually working in Kingshan Hunting House now are you and Ling Ling. Who else could it be but you? Zhao Manan had also met Ling Ling a few times, and he also had some understanding of Kingshan Hunting House. So, as soon as the news came out, and Tang Mao had asked for leave during this period, he immediately understood. Tang Mao stared at Zhao Manan, looked left and right, and then said, not bad, you can be so smart. However, as Zhao Manan said, Kingshan Hunting House is indeed an old brand, but in fact, Tang Mao and Ling Ling are the only two who receive orders more frequently. Not only are the other hunters strong, but they are also old hands, and they are just hanging out and playing soy sauce. As for the orders, they were extremely picky. They would not accept orders that were too easy, those that paid little, and those that were far away. In short, they would not accept any orders. Tang Mao was even not sure whether these people were hunters. Moreover, until now, Tang Mao had no idea how many people there were in Kingshan Hunting Agency. All he knew was that senior sister Lenking was the deputy chief judge, and old man Bao was the old hunting king. Besides the two of them, there was only his little partner, Lali Ling Ling. As for the other people, he had seen their photos, but Tang Mao had no idea what their names were, how old they were, or what their cultivation was. Do you think I'm stupid? After a moment of silence, Zhao Manan came back to his senses and asked Tang Mao uncertainly. Tang Mao, he didn't respond. After all, Zhao Manan's IQ, apart from business and dating young models, is really zero, or even negative, seeing that Tang Mao didn't say anything and just gave him a smile. Zhao Manan was even more puzzled. He had no choice but to pat him on the shoulder and kindly responded, be more confident, brother. Hearing this, Zhao Manan finally smiled, and Tang Mao's voice continued, remove the maybe. Zhao Manan, originally, he wanted to say something, but he was hit hard by Tang Mao's harmless insult, and didn't want to say anything in an instant. Tang Mao looked around, but found that Mo Fan was gone. He looked at Zhao Manan with some confusion and said, I say, where is Mo Fan? Him? It seems that he also encountered a bounty. He was just like you before, taking a leave to make a fortune. Zhao Manan was thick-skinned and quickly recovered. When he heard Tang Mao's question, he responded immediately. Then he rubbed his hands and said, I really envy you hunters. The bounty this time is so much that it makes me jealous. I wonder what bounty Mo Fan is doing. Tang Mao glanced at Zhao Manan and raised his middle finger. If my father had an old man like you, why would he need to get up so early and stay up late and take risks to do what bounty? That's right. Zhao Manan thought it made sense. Although he couldn't have hundreds of millions at once, the magic tools, magic weapons and soul seeds on him added up to an astronomical figure. Besides, if he had that much time, he could lie on the sofa in the bar, or on the big bed in the hotel, enjoying the tender model. Wouldn't it be nice? Tang Mao didn't care about what Zhao Manan thought. As for whether Mo Fan was there, he just asked casually. What he did was not important to Tang Mao. Chapter 315 Muningsu. This all happened too suddenly. When Tang Mao and Zhao Manan were together, no matter what the topic started with, in the end, it would always become, the girls passing by there have nice breasts, the girls there have firmer buttocks. This can be regarded as their common hobby. When the two were talking excitedly, Jiang Yu, who looked bored, suddenly came over and said to them mysteriously, do you know that the skeleton at the seaside of Tanoia has been identified? Tang Mao was not very interested. After all, no matter what it was, it had nothing to do with him. Zhao Manan was not very interested either. At this moment, all he could think of was the round and white thing. Jiang Yu saw that the two were not very interested, but he still said it was a mammoth sea beast at its peak. Its strength was already at the submonarch level. I can't imagine that a creature that is so powerful would be plucked to only bones. When Zhao Manan heard this, all the thoughts in his mind instantly dissipated. Submonarch level monsters have become bones? Question mark? With their strength, why are they still wasting time here? Question mark? I think we should leave this place as soon as possible, Zhao Manan said seriously. Jiang Yu smiled and said, don't worry, the security here has been strengthened. It is said that even superclass mages have come here. Zhao Manan was relieved. Jiang Yu said again, by the way, what were you talking about just now? Although everyone is a team member, the only people Jiang Yu can play with are Tang Mao, Mo Fan and Zhao Manan. AI Jiang Tu has always been the serious type, and as for Zhu Jiaming, only Guan Yu in the team can treat him with respect. The two of them are just because of their good family relationship. So, this is why Jiang Yu came to chat with them. Tang Mao was about to answer when he saw Muting Ying walking by. He just said perfunctorily, let's talk about it again. Muting Ying is the same from front to back, and there is nothing protruding. Zhao Manan laughed out loud when he heard this. Jiang Yu was embarrassed, and his face turned red. Zhao Manan said with some contempt, hey, Jiang Yu, you are a man after all. Why are you blushing when talking about women? Do you think everyone is the same as you two? Jiang Yu said with some embarrassment. Speaking of which, he has never held a girl's hand in his life. You are not still a virgin, are you? Zhao Manan suddenly grinned. Jiang Yu was speechless for a while. At this time, he regretted joining in. These two old hooligans are simply going to corrupt him, the flower of the motherland. But now he can't run away, even if he wants to. Zhao Manan is a typical idiot who digs into everything and wants to find out everything. Tang Mao was not very interested in this. While Zhao Manan was teasing Jiang Yu, he came to Muningsu who was alone and then took her away. On the way back, he hadn't examined Leng Miran because of the great consumption. It was a little bit of a lack of care. Tang Mao felt that he needed to care for Leng Miran. Muningsu was taken away and was also stunned. But she was used to Tang Mao's operation. At this time, everyone was doing their own things. Except for Nanrongni, no one noticed that Tang Mao and Muningsu left. Nanrongni was extremely puzzled at this time. She didn't understand. She had such a great figure, and she was also a healing mage. Recently, her clothes were full of seductive feelings. Why didn't Tang Mao, a pervert, want to get close to her? Question mark? That's right. During this period of travel, Nanrongni was focused on Tang Mao. There was no other reason. Just because Tang Mao could heal Muningsu from the backlash of the ice crystal bow, it was enough for her to care. After all, in her opinion, the ice crystal bow would be hers sooner or later. Of course, she is still Muningsu's best friend now. But she was so focused on Tang Mao that she didn't notice Muningsu's alienation from her. On the other side, Tang Mao brought Muningsu to his room and started to treat her. This treatment was different from the previous ones. Tang Mao used his hands and mouth at the same time. In less than a minute, the equipment wrapped around Muningsu was removed. All this happened very suddenly, so suddenly that she herself was not prepared at all. In fact, she didn't react until the moment Tang Mao entered openly, but she was slow after all. The moment she saw the red, Muningsu frowned, but gritted her teeth and injured it. She just stared at Tang Mao with some resentment in her beautiful eyes, although there was no distance between the two. However, it was so sudden. She was still somewhat unacceptable. The reason why Tang Mao did this was that he was provoked by Jiang Shaoxu's stinky hoof and talked with Zhao Manan for a long time. Even if he was a monk, he felt a little uncomfortable. Everything was so natural. Everything was so smooth. Maybe the backlash this time was more serious. Muningsu was also groaning in pain when she was treated. Even though she had gritted her teeth and injured it, this guy was never satisfied with the treatment. The cold had dissipated, but he wanted to eradicate it for her. Muningsu naturally didn't believe this. But what could she do? It was already like this. She couldn't just kick Tang Mao down, right? Because Emofan hadn't returned to the team yet, the national team members could only choose to rest in Portugal. However, they were about to collect the medals of the National Hall, so they were not in a hurry to travel. And no one cared about the disappearance of Tang Mao and Muningsu. After all, the two of them were back from a mission. Even Jiang Shaoxu, who was chatting with Mu Tingying, didn't suspect anything at all. A woman in love will always have stupid moments, such as now, when Mu Tingying saw that Muningsu and Tang Mao were gone. She said, "Your man was taken away by Muningsu, and you still want to take me shopping?" Jiang Shaoxu laughed and said nonchalantly, "So what? Nothing will happen. After all, she just took action." According to the internet, Chinese people are generally younger in this regard. It takes 1 or 2 hours to recover. As for the help of medicine, it is only a short-lived beauty. Jiang Shaoxu felt that a man like Tang Mao who cherishes himself would definitely not do such a stupid thing. Mu Tingying curled her lips. She was unhappy with Muningsu for a long time. However, when facing Tang Mao, she had no temper at all. The pride of the whole person was trampled on unconsciously. She didn't know what the reason was, anyway. But because of this, she was even more unhappy with Muningsu who crushed her everywhere. When Jiang Shaoxu came to call her to go shopping, he found that the two were gone. Mu Tingying always felt something was wrong, but this official lady didn't believe it! Exclamation mark. And Jiang Shaoxu was naturally clear about Mu Tingying's little thoughts. However, she didn't point it out. After all, in this team, only Mu Tingying would go shopping everywhere. She and I have the same interests. As for other women, Jiang Shaoxu even doubted whether they were women. They didn't even know how to go shopping. Nanju was a fan of antiques, and Narangni didn't know what she was thinking every day. As for Muningsu and Munijiao, they practiced. So, Jiang Shaoxu had no suitable partner for shopping except Mu Tingying. Chapter 316 Rejection of Reward. I've recovered. Muningsu's injuries have healed, although there were various discomforts in the process. When the cold air dissipated, her pale little face finally returned to its normal rosy color. "No, you haven't fully recovered yet." Tang Mao checked her and found that she was not well yet. Since it is necessary to treat it, it is natural to treat it thoroughly at one time and eradicate the root of the disease. Of course, whether this is true or not, only he knows it. A one-time treatment did not completely eradicate the root of the disease as Muningsu thought. Recently, because Emofan has not returned to the team, she and Tang Mao have been missing for a while every day. And every time, it was Tang Mao who treated her. She felt that she had changed. Was she about to recover? She was also about to fall into it. For some reason, Tang Mao looked like a gentleman, but when he treated her, he was so wild. At first, Muningsu thought that Tang Mao was just like that, but there was one time when she asked him why he was so rude. Tang Mao responded without hesitation, "Because it will have the best therapeutic effect." He liked Muningsu's cold and ecstatic temperament, but he also liked that strange feeling. In short, it was very exciting. He also wanted to control it, but that pretty face that brought disaster to the country and the people was really. And Muningsu was sure that this guy was definitely doing it on purpose. It was outrageous. Although I forced myself to tell myself in my heart that this was wrong. How could it be like this? But if I knew it in my heart, would I be able to control it? Although Jiang Shaoxu, the current girlfriend, also felt something was wrong, he didn't have any evidence or catch anything in the act, so he just thought he was overthinking. A few days later. How long do we have to wait here? Didn't Emofan say that he will be back in about 10 days? Guan Yu said impatiently. Since last night, his mood has been terrible. He even dislikes this place. The reason, of course, was that when he was strolling last night, he saw Tang Mao and Muningsu kissing each other. And, looking at their appearance, they looked like a loving couple. This scene was a fatal blow to Guan Yu. Of course, it wasn't just Guan Yu who was impatient. Others also wanted to leave. It was too boring to stay here every day. AI Jiang Tu said helplessly, "There's no news from Emofan yet. Isn't it good for us to leave like this? What's wrong with that? If he doesn't come back, will we not participate in the World Championship?" Zhu Jiming was also very dissatisfied with Emofan and said in a cold voice, Old AI, why don't you go to the next destination first? I'll wait for him here. Nanju knew AI Jiang 2's dilemma and suggested. AI Jiang 2 thought it was feasible and nodded in agreement. But at this moment, he suddenly received a message from his mentor. After taking a general look, AI Jiang 2 announced it to everyone. Although the bounty after the rescue was very tempting, and it was just a trip, after AI Jiang 2 finished speaking, everyone still exclaimed. It's no wonder that several people were so noisy, mainly because the place of rescue was the Sahara Desert, which was too dangerous. Not to mention high-level mages entering there, even if they were super level, or even forbidden spell mages, there was no guarantee that they could survive. After all, the outer circle of the Sahara has completely turned crimson, and the density of demons is comparable to some deep sea areas. According to legend, demons do not appear alone, but in groups and tribes. If you go a little further into the Sahara, it will be completely purple. Purple means that the density of demons is more than 3 times that of crimson, and you will truly experience the terrible scene of seeing demons wandering in groups after walking a few steps. Even the demon empire exists. AI Jiang 2 said. The instructor said that you can choose whether to go to rescue or not, but those who give up will lose the qualification to obtain the resources of the government next time. Tang Mao asked, who will the resources belong to if you give up? The instructors didn't say that. AI Jiang 2 shook his head. No one said they wanted to go to rescue at this time. Except for those who were determined not to go. The others looked at each other. Forget it, that kind of place is too dangerous. Tang Mao thought about it and refused. He remembered that in the original book, Mo Fan and his friends went there, but they were lucky enough not to die, but that was only because of the halo of Mo Fan. After they were lost and rescued, the superclass mage who rushed there seemed to have offended some powerful demons in it. In the end, he was killed along with him. Thinking of the extremely low visibility and the easy loss of oneself in the place with fixed resources, Tang Mao naturally had no interest. Chapter 317. The Mentor's Trap. Mu Ningxu originally wanted to go. After all, she was short of resources. However, Tang Mao looked at her, and it was clear that he didn't agree. In the end, she had no choice but to give up the resources this time. Mu Ningxu herself didn't know why she had been particularly obedient to Tang Mao's words. Maybe it was because Tang Mao at night was really so scary. After Tang Mao's signal, Jiang Shaoxu, Zhao Manan and others, who were not short of these resources, refused one after another. Of course, after everyone lost the bounty this time, they started a new journey. This time without resources, they needed to complete new tasks in some other places. Since no one went to rescue, the plan was naturally the same as before. AI Jiang 2 led the team to leave first, and Nanju was responsible for waiting here for Mo Fan to come back, and then gather with the team. After all, everyone hopes to improve their strength and needs all kinds of resources, so as not to fall behind the pace of the entire team's strength. The most important thing is that everyone wants to shine in the water city of Venice, making themselves and the forces behind them the focus of the world. When everyone left here and arrived in Egypt, Tang Mao remembered that when he returned to China to make beads, several Egyptians were very arrogant and went to the national pavilion to provoke. However, after all, they were just some jumping clowns. In Tang Mao's place, they were really nothing. After arriving in Egypt, the challenge of the national pavilion was naturally easy. Although they were not arrogant, the easy crushing really made the Egyptians ashamed. After all the training, they were also very smooth. Except for the angry medal in Peru, they did not get the medals of other national pavilions that needed to be challenged, including the American team, which was quite difficult. Of course, for others, the United States may be a powerful country, but for China, it is actually nothing. AI Jiang 2 looked at the medal in his hand and said with a smile, "We have enough medals. As long as we complete the training here, we can go to Venice." Everyone was excited when they heard it. After walking such a long way, almost circling the earth, they are finally closer to their final destination, Venice. The previous failures, desolation, and defeat will not matter. As long as they can shine in the Venice Water City competition, all the past will be covered by the dazzling light. The girls are all very happy. Even the cold beauty Mu Ningxu has a smile on her face. Mu Ningxiao said at this time, I don't know what the experience this time will be. Without waiting for others to answer, Tang Mao hurriedly said, Egypt, the most famous is the Egyptian undead. I think our experience task must be related to the undead. Speaking of which, Mu Ningxiao hasn't seen him face to face for many days. Really think Tang Mao doesn't care? That's impossible. It's just that he has never had the opportunity to chat with her. Even if he has nothing to say, he will get a cold expression. It's as if the relationship between the two is very unfamiliar. Undead. Mu Ningxiao was a little surprised when she heard what Tang Mao said. Even forgot that the two were still in a cold war. Then he said, are you really going to deal with the undead? It's not that Mu Ningxiao is afraid of the undead, but if she provokes the other party, it would be like going to die. Tang Mao can understand it. After all, the incident in the ancient capital almost shocked the world. The undead in Egypt are the same as the undead in the ancient capital in China. They are endless. Fortunately, they have a fixed territory for activities. Otherwise, if the undead army like the tide of the ancient capital launches an attack, the Egyptians may not be able to withstand it. So if they provoke the other party, the members of the national government still don't want to do such a thing. It's just my guess, but Jiao, don't worry, I will never let you get hurt. Mu Ningxiao heard this, and suddenly snorted coldly, then glanced behind him, and said in a light voice, you should go and protect Jiang Shaoxu. Tang Mao was embarrassed for a while, and when he turned around, he saw that Jiang Shaoxu had come to his side. Damn it, you want to abandon me again, don't you? Although Jiang Shaoxu was very unhappy, she was taught from childhood that at this time, if she made a big fuss, she would not only be laughed at by others, but Tang Mao would also ignore her, right? Seeing Jiang Shaoxu coming, Mu Ningxiao turned around and walked away. Tang Mao looked at Jiang Hui who was complaining beside her and thought, what a sin. After that, the instructor did as expected, and did not let everyone leave Egypt, but sent them to a city called Pashini, which was about 200 kilometers away from Cairo, and was a small city-state in Egypt. Arriving in Pashini, everyone saw that the whole city had some ancient Egyptian charm, and the stone fences were still preserved outside the city, including the streets and houses, many of which were made of stone. Speaking of which, Tang Mao was really curious, where did the people from this bad place get the confidence, and were so arrogant all day long? Question mark? And in Egypt, probably because of the pyramids, most of the magicians are undead magicians. However, they did not see the undead all over the streets. After all, every city here strictly prohibits any undead mage from summoning the undead, unless it is necessary to fight. After all, there are still many ordinary people in this world. Not everyone can accept the rotten and decayed bodies and hideous and terrifying appearance of the undead. If it is not strictly prohibited, there will be a creepy feeling of living in a city with the dead. The instructors were very vague about the training mission this time, but from their previous description, Egypt is somewhat similar to the East China Sea city in our it is a large training ground, and their group of students need to stay here for some time. It can also be said that what they may face next is the terrifying army of undead. Even if some people don't want to get involved, what is coming will still come. The instructors said in a beautiful name, they hope that the students will have more contact with different demons, so that they can cultivate strong adaptability and coping ability of the students. After they entered the city, the streets were full of injured Egyptians. Before I came here, I heard some Egyptians say that the city of Pashini is not very peaceful. It seems that something has happened. Jiang Yu looked at the situation on the street and said with a frown. Everyone also had a bad premonition. They all had a feeling that the vague training tasks of the instructors might be a huge pit. Chapter 318 Yi Xingxia. At this time, several wind and earth magicians were seen carrying a white stretcher, running towards the center of the street at the speed of the two magics. On the stretcher lay a person wrapped in a large white cloth, and bright red blood was seeping out of the cloth. Due to the bumps, blood kept dripping down. It fell into the cracks of the uneven stones on the street. Just after they passed by, Guan Yu, who was standing by, said with a twitch in his mouth, that person seemed to have lost his legs. I saw the wound. Was it torn off? Having both legs torn off is not a pain that ordinary people can bear. That uneven wound is much more terrible than being cut off neatly. Hearing what Guan Yu said, several people present couldn't help but feel a little scared. The person being carried was naturally a magician. But what kind of terrifying existence could tear a magician's legs apart? While they were in a daze, they saw the injured being transported from the other two ends of the city. This road extended all the way to the Nancheng mountain in the city. About 1,000 meters ahead, there was a very obvious slope. Obviously, this should be a main road, but cars and other things were prohibited, and the injured were sent to the white tent with gold edges on the slope of the street. What puzzled everyone the most was that the place where the instructors needed everyone to report was actually there. Everyone couldn't help but have some bad premonitions in their hearts, and at this time, Nanrangni suddenly looked at a tent in the distance and said, "The sign of this tent." As she spoke, several people came back to their senses from what had just happened, and then looked at the tent. It was the flag of a flower wheel. The whole flower wheel looked like it had been designed very carefully. No matter from which angle you look at it, you will see similar and opposite patterns of petals and branches, and then these opposite and connected petals and branches form a complete milky white flower wheel with a golden blue halo. As soon as you see the flower logo, you can tell that it must be from a world famous super organization. This flower wheel with a completely different luster from the base color is equivalent to an anti-counterfeiting mark that is difficult to imitate. Nanrangni restrained her emotions and said excitedly, "That is the Parthenon logo. No matter what kind of woman she is, if she likes something, she is absolutely sincere." After hearing what she said, several people had different expressions. Only Tang Mao didn't seem to be interested. After several people came over, Tang Mao and Zhao Manan looked at the woman there at the same time, only to see that her dark brown waterfall hair fell to her waist, without a trace of disorder, as smooth and shiny as silk. Lei Wen's fair and quiet side face was not completely sharp, but full and elastic, which made her originally gentle appearance look more friendly. When she smiled, her pink, round mouth would always create a shallow arc with her plump cheeks, making her look not as rigid as a sculpture. Even if her demeanor rarely changed dramatically, she had wisdom and restrained elegance, and she also had the vigor and charm of a young woman. This woman was familiar to both Tang Mao and Zhao Manan. Wasn't she Yi Xingxia, the healing sister who had traveled with them to find Yanji? Just as the two were in a daze, Yi Xingxia seemed to have completed her mission. When she turned around, she happened to see Mu Ningxu, and then she said in surprise, "Ningxu, why are you here?" Mu Ningxu also looked at her, with a bit of surprise on her face. To be honest, Mu Ningxu didn't notice Yi Xingxia. After all, she was not like Tang Mao and Zhao Manan, who would stare at a pretty big girl. The two of them were so synchronized that everyone in the team was used to it. However, when they heard the other party calling Mu Ningxu, they realized that they knew each other. After greeting Mu Ningxu, Yi Xingxia also noticed Tang Mao and Zhao Manan. She greeted them politely, but when she looked around, she found that there seemed to be one person missing. Mu Ningxu seemed to see what she was thinking, and then said, "Mo Fan is doing a bounty, and he didn't come with the team. But I heard that his mission has ended, and he is rushing to Egypt with Nanju, but it should take a few days to arrive." Yi Xingxia was relieved when she learned that Mu Ningxu was not in danger. Yi Xingxia stayed here for a while, and was taken away. She is very busy now, because she came here for internship. Mu Ningxu just chatted with her casually, and then went to another place with Tang Mao and others, because their training mission this time was obviously related to the undead. This time's mission is to solve Mirage here. Of course, they don't have to solve the Mirage. They are responsible for solving a group of poisonous gold mummies. As long as they get rid of these poisonous gold mummies, their mission will be completed. As for the next thing, it has nothing to do with them. However, they naturally did not start right now. Everyone discussed that they would wait until Mo Fan and Nanju arrived before starting. This training mission is quite dangerous. It can be said that it is already a war. In the next few days, everyone in the national government team began to understand the situation here. The situation they understood was actually not very useful. It was quite troublesome without Nanju in the team. After all, Ai Jiangtu, the leader, preferred to take action directly. As for strategies, Nanju was responsible. Because there was no way to complete the mission directly, everyone naturally did their own thing. Nanrani originally wanted to use the relationship between Muningsu and Yixingxia to contact Parthenon, but unfortunately, Muningsu coldly refused. Nanrani asked why, but Muningsu did not explain. Tang Mao happened to arrive and took her away directly. Watching Muningsu leaving with Tang Mao, Nanrani's expression turned cold, thinking, Muningsu, you won't be able to jump around for much longer. Humph. In fact, she has discovered something now. After all, since Muningsu has always been so cold to her, but it seems that she feels the same way as to other people. At first, she didn't care, but now thinking about it, it is obviously wrong. You know, the two of them were good friends at first. Muningsu had never been like this to her before, especially when she met Yixingxia before. And Muningsu and Munijio treated each other well, but she still endured it. Until today, she really didn't want to endure it anymore, and even wanted to break up. But for the ice crystal breaking bow, Nanrani finally just sighed slightly. Sorry, I lost my composure. Chapter 319 7 Series High Level. After being taken away by Tang Mao, Muningsu lost her coldness, and said softly with a hint of tenderness, thank you. Why do you have to thank me? Tang Mao stopped and then said, since you already know who she is, why are you pretending to be a fool? I'm waiting for them to make a move. Muningsu naturally did not hide anything from Tang Mao. After he asked, she told him her thoughts. Tang Mao curled his lips when he heard it, somewhat confused. Muningsu did not say much, but changed the subject and said, what do you think about this experience? Isn't it just to deal with the poisonous gold mummy? This time the experience task is very simple. Tang Mao shrugged. The experience task given by the instructors is to help them solve the poisonous gold mummy that troubles the Egyptians. Tang Mao has the black snake demon armor, so even if he is alone, he can easily solve it. What's more, with the addition of a whole team, their main target is the leader of the poisonous gold mummy. Once it dies, and the poisonous gold mummies disperse, then the destruction of the pyramid will be the business of the Egyptian army itself. Whether they can solve it or not, what does it have to do with Tang Mao? Muningsu looked at Tang Mao with a relaxed face, and asked in confusion, you seem to have participated in the war. When the ancient capital was in disaster, I was the main force. Tang Mao responded with a smile. He said this more than once, but Muningsu didn't believe it. After all, Tang Mao was just a high-level mage, no matter how strong and abnormal he was. Moreover, he was not as strong as he is now, right? However, Muningsu, who knew Tang Mao well, was absolutely sure that he was not joking. So, you are the ice and fire demon who came from the sky to save the ancient capital? Seeing Muningsu's puzzled look, Tang Mao did not respond. Instead, he lowered his head and tried the taste of lipstick. There was no way. He didn't know how to respond to Muningsu at the moment. In this public, his lips were suddenly sealed, and his teeth were pried open. Muningsu was stunned for a while. After reacting, he quickly pushed Tang Mao away. Without waiting for Tang Mao to continue, he reminded her weakly, this is the street. Tang Mao glanced around and then said, it's okay, there's no one here. As he said that, without waiting for Muningsu to respond, he took her to a nearby alley. He said he took her, but in fact he dragged her. As soon as the two of them entered the alley, a sizzling sound came out. In the quiet and dark alley, this sound was almost particularly loud. And then, a breeze blew. Then you can see that some thin white silk floated out. At this time, it was exactly 6 o'clock in the evening, and an ancient bell in the city rang papapa. This bell is not only strange in sound, but also interesting in appearance. However, because the city is under the threat of the undead, no one goes to appreciate it. Well enough. It's too late. Let's go back, okay? Muningsu looked at the dark surroundings, and held the wall, thinking about leaving. There was no other way. The alley was already dark, and Tang Mao used shadow energy to cover it, so it was pitch dark. It's only once. Why are you in such a hurry? Hearing what Muningsu said, Tang Mao said with some dissatisfaction. She wanted to say something else, but her arm was suddenly grabbed and then swallowed up in the darkness again. She didn't know where she was, nor did she know what was going on. She could only passively hold onto the wall. Then, except for the sound of Pucci, there was no other sound. Of course, Tang Mao actually wanted to hear Muningsu's beautiful voice. Unfortunately, this girl could bear it. No matter what he did, she just gritted her teeth stubbornly. When the two returned to their residence, it was already 9 o'clock in the evening. After they came back, they learned that Nanju and Emofan, who were originally expected to arrive here in 2 or 3 days, had arrived at night. However, Emofan was not here at this time. He seemed to have gone to find Yi Xingxia. In this regard, both Tang Mao and Zhao Manan could understand. After all, they are all men. Even if it was just the two of them, didn't they also go out to indulge themselves? Of course, there are still differences. Tang Mao was accompanied by a goddess, while Zhao Manan, the stinky brother, was just a joke. After learning about the training mission here, Nanju immediately went to study it. The others dispersed. After all, they had to participate in a war. No one took this as a joke. It is difficult to win a war by relying on personal bravery alone. Of course, if the fist is ridiculously big, it will naturally be a different story. However, there is obviously no such strong man here at the moment. Even if there is, it will cost a huge price. Tang Mao will definitely not spend his beads that have been full of energy for the Egyptians. This is his biggest life-saving trump card. As for the time fluid, even if he wants to use it, he has no chance. Since the eldest and second daughters fell asleep, they seem to be hibernating. There is no sign of waking up yet. As for Ziohei, damn, I don't know where they kidnapped a few tigresses recently, and they are busy spreading seeds every day. Speaking of which, the life of this dog thing is almost catching up with mine. However, Tang Mao is sometimes very curious about how this little black man can do that with a tigress that is so different in size. Of course, he just thinks about it when he is bored. After all, when he has time, he naturally thinks about how to get Munigio's forgiveness. After all, the palms, backs of hands, fingers, and nails are all his own. It is very uncomfortable to lose that part. Unfortunately, Munigio, who thought that his attitude had improved, was greeted by a whirlwind when he just sneaked into the room. Fortunately, his wind system has now reached a high level, so he is not too embarrassed. Along the way, Tang Mao's cultivation will naturally not remain stagnant. Now he has 7 high-level systems. High-level second level of ice system, perfect level 1 of thunder system, perfect level 1 of space system, high-level fire system, high-level shadow system, high-level summoning system, and high-level wind system. At present, except for the wind system, that has not yet controlled the stars enough, the other systems, high-level magic is almost the speed of some mid-level mages depicting mid-level magic. With Tang Mao's current strength, even if he has achieved high-level perfection in both systems, if he does not have the assistance of the top-grade soul seeds, he may not be his opponent in the battle. However, although he was not injured, he could only stop here. If he continued, it would be counterproductive. Anyway, it was the canary he raised, and she couldn't fly. No 320 number. Actually, to put it bluntly, it was in the afternoon, when Muningsu fed him. Otherwise, how could he give up so easily? Otherwise, as a man who can shine with a little sunshine, how could he retreat after encountering such a small setback? However, without Gio's sweet embrace, Tang Mao was still slightly relieved. If he really went in, he would be a little panicked. Today, the bullet consumption is a bit large, and there is really no public grain. Moreover, although Muningsu is only 100 pounds, it is very exhausting to carry her all the time. He just wants to have a comfortable sleep now. However, just when Tang Mao passed Munigio's door and passed by Jiang Shaoxu's room, he was suddenly pulled in by a hand. Tang Mao, it was very sudden. Bang. After the person was pulled into the room, Jiang Shaoxu closed the door. Then he looked at Tang Mao, threw a coquettish eye, and giggled. Damn, you want to chat with me at night? Why didn't you say it earlier, and you found the wrong door? Are you stupid? When Munigio used magic just now, she naturally noticed it. I wanted to see what happened, but who would have thought that I would see Tang Mao as soon as I went out? Jiang Shaoxu, a powerful brain player, subconsciously thought that this stinky man wanted to attack him at night. When he saw Tang Mao, the depression of the past few days was also swept away. Tang Mao was overwhelmed. After all, he was not looking for this little hoof. Staying with her for a night, even if he didn't go straight in, it would be extremely exhausting. After all, this bitch has been craving him for a long time. But she just didn't take the initiative, always teasing. But even so, every time Tang Mao was with her, after they separated, he felt that his body shrank seriously. He wanted to run away directly, but Tang Mao also knew that the result of running away would definitely be miserable. Jiang Xiaoxu could probably turn the house upside down. She has never been afraid of big things. But think about it, she is already an only child at present. The two people in the family are still big bosses. How can the only beloved baby daughter tolerate grievances? Question mark? Just like when dealing with General Moat, even if AI Jiang Tu was very angry, he could do it if he wanted to punish the other party across the border, but it would never be that fast. But what about Jiang Xiaoxu? Once he lost his temper and called back. When they rushed back to the castle, Moat was laid off directly. Moreover, after making a bet with Tang Mao and losing his resources, Moat had no intention of regretting or dragging his feet. All this was naturally not because of Tang Mao. It was because of this proud girl beside him, and he had some idea of all this. So, looking at her happy face, Tang Mao could only hold back all his complaints in his heart. Then he smiled and said, Nanju is back. I just told you that when you are doing the mission, follow me closely so that I can protect you. That's it? Jiang Xiaoxu, who was quite happy just now, changed his face in seconds after hearing what Tang Mao said. This speed is simply amazing. Then she looked at Tang Mao suspiciously. Don't you have anything else to ask me? Instinctively, he was about to say but when he thought about the fact that he had just entered the wrong room and the little fox looked like she was about to explode, he immediately changed his words and said, Little hoof, I come to you in the middle of the night. What do you think could happen? Jiang Fox was satisfied, but he said again, no, I'm still young. Although he said so, he was already hanging on the little hoof. When the sky was turning pale, Tang Mao finally crawled out. Even when Nanju and the others made plans during the day, Tang Mao did not participate. Because they broke through that layer of relationship last night, Jiang Xiaoxu was responsible for delivering the message. In this regard, neither AI Jiang Tu nor Nanju had any objections. After all, Jiang Xiaoxu was currently Tang Mao's real girlfriend. Muningsu didn't care about these things. After all, it was an extremely luxurious thing for her to get rid of the pain of the ice crystal bow and slowly return to normal. And Munigio didn't really care. After all, when she allowed AI to, she was mentally prepared. The reason why she was so angry was because of Tang Mao, that scumbag. He was flirting with her 1 second and hugged another woman the next second. He treated her like a fool. How could she tolerate it? Question mark? However, I heard that Tang Mao didn't come today. Munigio was a little worried again. She didn't know if she had hurt him because she was too strong last night. She could never imagine that the tough Tang Mao was not hurt by her at all. Instead, it was Muningsu first, and then Jiang Xiaoxu, each more charming than the other, that caused him to crawl. After agreeing on the task, everyone dispersed. After watching Jiang Xiaoxu walk to Tang Mao's room, Munigio had to give up, even though she was a little worried. Gada. After opening the door, Jiang Xiaoxu looked at Tang Mao and said with disgust, That's it? You dare to flirt with other women all day long? Just as if he didn't hear it, Tang Mao continued to close his eyes and pretend to be asleep. Seeing that he didn't react at all, Jiang Xiaoxu walked slowly to Tang Mao's side. Then he sat on his back. The moment this soft buttocks pressed up, he was very unhappy. This little hoof is simply too much. She must be taught a lesson after a few days of recuperation. As for now, a real man can bend and stretch, so he endured it. But he wanted to play dead, but Jiang Xiaoxu didn't give him this opportunity. Suddenly, she rolled over and lay on him. The long hair beside her ears teased Tang Mao. Fuck you. Tang Mao opened her eyes directly and then turned over and pressed down by her. Jiang Xiaoxu was not panicked at all, but giggled coquettishly. Why don't you continue pretending? Tang Mao curled her lips. Who pretended? I was just sleeping. She didn't say anything, just looked at Tang Mao. My waist was injured by Munigio last night, little bitch. When daddy recovers, I will let you know what is horrible. Jiang Shaoxu looked at Tang Mao with a playful look, as if he believed it, and said, "Oh, your waist is injured. I thought it was good looking but useless." Although she said so, you can tell from her expression that this bitch clearly doesn't trust herself. But for some reason, she seems to be quite satisfied with this feeling. "Are you okay now?" Hearing her question, Tang Mao felt a little guilty. "What are you doing, you vicious woman?" "That's what I meant. Open bracket close bracket." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 321 Simple Experience. The most vicious woman's heart is not just a casual remark. He has already been like this. Who would have thought that Jiang Shaoxu, this little hoof, would come to squeeze him? At first, he insisted on recovering his original intention, but since the other party could be called a fox, how treacherous he was. In the end, he compromised. Of course, when Jiang Shaoxu left, he still told Tang Mao about the battle plan. However, he didn't care much. Speaking of plans or not, as long as the commander of the poisonous gold mummy was solved, it would be fine. At that time, he would be responsible for killing it. Now he has no mind to care about these. He doesn't know whether the person is useless or not, but this waste. That's really a tragedy. He is a little regretful now. Why is he so proud for nothing? Question mark. The most important thing is, why did he provoke Jiang Fox? Question mark. Although it smells good, it is also very tiring. However, the melons he planted must be continued with gritted teeth. The next day, when the sun just rose, a large army was already gathering in the west of the city, and the main force was the government's military mages. After all, this is the city they have to protect, and here, they are the protagonists. The members of the national government team were naturally arranged in the ranks. They met the staff officer Fena, who was on this marching mission. She was a woman who should be over 40 years old. She could not see any feminine softness and charm from her, only the ability and sharpness of a veteran in the battlefield. However, Tang Mao was too old, so he had no interest in chatting. After all, this was not his dish, so he stood at the end of the team. Of course, the main reason was that his waist was not strong. He didn't want to waste time. After all, when the dog woman left in the early morning, she told him that he would have to pay public grain every day in the future. I really don't know how a grown-up girl dared to say such a thing. Moreover, the degree of clinginess of this dog woman is simply deadly. However, although he was very repulsive, he was very happy in his heart. After all, who doesn't like to be stuck by a beautiful girl? At this time, Nanju, who was in charge of leading the team, seemed to have talked with the staff officer. The whole team began to move forward. After the road was cleaned up, there were not as many undead as before. This team arrived at the camp at a distance of 5 kilometers smoothly. When they arrived here, a new group of teams also rushed over immediately. After the new force arrived, everyone charged again. However, this time, it was obviously not a lazy ride. This time their goal was a high slope 15 kilometers away from the pyramid. They had to gain a foothold on that high slope before they could continue to move forward. And the task of their national government team was to get there first and deal with the group of despicable poisonous gold mummies on the backside of the high slope. What happened afterwards had nothing to do with them. When the large army gradually approached the high slope, the national government team, under the cover of a group of shadow mages, detoured to the back of the high slope. As soon as you climb over this hillside covered with yellow dust, you will see a large area of golden green. If you look closely, you will find that it is the poisonous gold skin of the mummy. This group of mummies with strange behaviors actually lie collectively behind the high slope, almost covering the sloping hillside. From a distance, it feels like this long hillside is covered with spectacular golden green tiles. The poisonous gold mummies were all sleeping, but they were soon awakened by the people who broke into the Guofu team. Then, These awakened poisonous gold mummies stood on the sloping high slope, opened their mouths collectively, and spit out a tide of poisonous fog. Even though they have a great advantage in number, they have no intention of coming down to fight hard. It must be said that they are still very smart. Tang Mao and others armed themselves with magic tools, and then they went to the pile of poisonous gold mummies and killed them. With the protection of the high-level armored black snake magic armor, Tang Mao directly ignored their toxins. The magic condensed by thunder, fire, and ice continued to blast out. Wave after wave of bombardment tore a huge hole in an instant. Although the poisonous gold mummies wanted to resist, their strongest weapon was the poisonous fog. When the poisonous fog lost its attack power, they completely lost their advantage. Nanju was originally tingling with scalp because of these monsters. However, after seeing Tang Mao, the pervert, rushing forward in one go, he subconsciously said to the team, "Follow Tang Mao." Although this guy was a little undisciplined, he was relieved to have him in front to resist. Look at the top, there is a three-eyed poisonous gold mummy. Jiang Xiaoxu, who was following the team, pointed to the height and reminded everyone. This three-eyed one is most likely the leader of this group of poisonous gold mummies. You attract their attention, and I will deal with it. Guan Yu looked at Nanju and others and said, and then disappeared on the spot. Guan Yu is now a high-level mage. With his soul-level magic weapon, it is easy for him to deal with the weak defense poisonous gold mummy and avoid its poison. Otherwise, why would he be so arrogant to provoke the poisonous gold mummy? The disappearance of Guan Yu did not affect anything. The poisonous gold mummies were already in chaos. It was not just Tang Mao who was killing them, even Mo Fan was working very hard. Others were a little curious. Did these two guys have a brain seizure? However, they did not know that the reason why Tang Mao and Mo Fan fought so hard was just because they were fighting for the spirit. However, Mo Fan was not as deep as Tang Mao. There was no way. Although the armor magic tool he got was not bad, he did not ignore the poison directly like Tang Mao. Moreover, his intermediate magic was only about to reach the level of the One Thought Star map, but it was not that he had already reached the One Thought Star map. In the herd, if he was not careful, he would be hit by a knife and release a wave of poison. Wouldn't that be a pit? But even so, the densely packed poisonous gold mummies were still running away in a hurry. It might be because Tang Mao's aura was too strong, which made it easy for them to cast spells, so the Guofu team seemed to be more powerful than the other, especially Muningsu, Ai Jiangtu and Mo Fan. Although their output was not as good as Tang Mao's, one of them was born with soul, one was extremely skilled in space control, and the other was multi-system. In addition, these mummies didn't care about releasing poison and only cared about escaping. This training mission seemed a little easier. P.S. The big boss is a leader, and he wants to take Yixingxia. Xiang has a bottom line. Chapter 322, The Sword of Death. When they came here before, everyone was still resisting and embarrassed, but now it seems that with a magic bomber like Tang Mao, what does it matter, even if there is a war? With him alone, it is equivalent to a reinforced army squad. Even if the two summoning girls are added, it may be comparable to a large team. After all, his magic is not interrupted, and the lethality of his skills in any department is very fierce. Just when Tang Mao and others were killing happily, Guan Yu also successfully solved the commander of the poisonous gold mummy. After this short period of experience, not only Tang Mao has become stronger, others are also getting stronger. Although Tang Mao doesn't like Guan Yu, this little 13-year-old, he has to admit that he is indeed much stronger. With that good soul level magic weapon, his strength in the national government team is also in the front row. After the poisonous gold mummy began to disperse, everyone did not chase it again. After all, their mission was not to kill them all, and then they walked up the hillside. Catcher. Catcher. Just as they were about to reach the second place to build the camp, suddenly, a strange sound came out. Then, a group of undeads covered in black appeared. There were nearly 50 of them. Moreover, whether it was the skin or the outer layer of corpse armor, even the swords held in their hands, they were all completely black, and only the eyes emitted a fascinating and strange red light, with a strong sense of ferocity. After seeing these black undeads, Nanju and Jiangyu immediately recognized them, and exclaimed at the same time, Ligian Deadpool. What is Ligian Deadpool? Seeing the shocked expressions of the two, Fan asked with some confusion. Nanju responded nervously, "This is a very strong existence among the undead. These 50 can almost match the other tens of thousands of weak undead groups." What? Hearing this, the few people who didn't know what this thing was were all stunned. At this time, Tang Mao had already made a move, with flames in his fists, and then a punch shook the ground. Then, the 9 palaces appeared. Bang, bang, bang. A series of green fire pillars suddenly exploded under the feet of the group of fiery sword Deadpools. However, the fiery fist 9 palaces, which usually melted all the general level monsters easily, did not destroy any of them this time. Question mark? The opponent seemed to have suffered some burns, but it was not serious. Moreover, they came directly to kill. Tang Mao was very unhappy. You know, when he was in the middle level, he didn't take the general level monsters seriously. Now that he is already in the high level, he can retreat tactically against some general level undead. Purple Sky Domain. Boom 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 as the opponent rushed over, or Thunder Domain instantly formed around Tang Mao. When those fiery sword Deadpools approached, they were immediately bombarded by thunderbolts. But the fiery sword Deadpools moved very quickly. Except for the first 5 who were repeatedly exploded by thunderbolts, the rest of the fiery sword Deadpools actually learned to dodge. Question mark? And they even know how to fight together. While dodging the bombardment of thunderbolts, they also wave their swords and use the power of dark attributes to bombard Tang Mao continuously. This is rare among the stupid undead. This kind of undead is definitely rare. Fortunately, Tang Mao's ice wall defense is strong enough, and they are just a group of general level creatures. Even the demons of the commander level can't break through the defense, let alone them. Gather thunder. Just as Tang Mao was resisting the opponent's dark attribute energy, the thunder of the domain began to gather around. Thunderbolts like this are useless, but how to attack in his domain is naturally up to him. In terms of control, no matter which system, Tang Mao has achieved the best state. Moreover, there is also the help of the Purple Sky Domain. The thunderbolts can't cause damage, but there are still other ways. And when Tang Mao gathered thunderbolts, the ruthless sword dead waiters were getting closer and closer. At this time, Ai Jiangtu and Muningsu, who were not far from Tang Mao, had already rushed over. As for the others, they were still rushing here quickly. Although they were a little afraid of these things, both Nanju and Jiangyu were still rushing here at full speed. Even Xiaoman Iron, who was afraid of death, came closer this time. As for Zhu Jiaming, who wanted to escape, when he saw the fiery sword Deadpool, he had no choice but to follow him when he saw that the others were already rushing towards Tang Mao. Although returning would not necessarily lead to death, it would definitely not be safe. Especially since this was still a battlefield, his behavior was simply courting death. He was usually a little stupid, but in some major matters, he could still distinguish between the important and the unimportant. Ai Jiangtu used the heavy stand to limit the opponent's speed, and Muningsu also used frost to freeze these fiery sword Deadpools. But she and Ai Jiangtu could only control more than 10. The remaining fiery sword Deadpools were still rushing here in a very regular manner. Fortunately, Tang Mao had already finished the drawing at this time. Giant thunderstorm. When the fiend sword Deadpool was less than 3 meters away, Tang Mao suddenly threw out a huge thunder energy ball. The moment the energy ball filled with thunder was thrown out, Tang Mao pulled Muningsu and Ai Jiangtu to his side. Then, ice walls immediately stood up around him. Boom boom. When the energy ball fell into the middle of the fiend sword Deadpool, they easily dodged it. They were still thinking about continuing to attack, but at this moment, the area that was originally covered with dark clouds suddenly became full of thunder. Even where Tang Mao and the others were, various thunder explosions were heard. Although those fiend sword Deadpools were very fast, they were almost useless in this thunder domain. The destructive power of this thunderstorm was different from the thunderbolts that fell from the thunder domain. This was condensed by Tang Mao's depiction of the higher level magic of the silent thunder death light and the addition of domain power and control. This was completely equivalent to the high level second level thunder element magic. The reason why it had to be released over a large area was just because these dogs move so fast. If it was just a small area, Tang Mao really didn't think he could solve it in one go. That's why he didn't even spare himself. Of course, he activated the protection, but in fact, he was mainly afraid of hurting Muningsu. Otherwise, even if he didn't use ice magic defense, he wouldn't be able to hurt her at all. After all, these thunders were his own, and he could completely endure their impact and absorb them into his body. Chapter 323 Finna comes. When the deafening thunder sounded, the Egyptian army rushing to the hillside and the people of the Guofu team rushing over were all stunned. Especially Ninja and the others. They were simply unbelievable about the scene in front of them. The power of the thunder explosion just now was almost as powerful as the spells of all of them combined, right? Even compared with Munings's ice crystal bow, it was comparable. And the super class mage Finna, the staff officer who came up from behind them, was also very surprised. To be honest, she was originally prepared to take action herself. After all, the lethality of these fiery sword deadly attendants was extremely terrifying. She didn't want to sacrifice her subordinates in vain, but she didn't expect that when she just arrived here, the secret sentry mage in front of her actually told her that it was over. Especially when her subordinates told her that it was a student of the Huaksha Guofu who solved the 50 fiery sword deadly attendants. She was a little dumbfounded. She didn't mean to underestimate the students of the Guofu team, but all this seemed a little exaggerated. You have to know that, even if one of his teams fought against the 50 fiery sword Deadpools, even if they could win, they would have to pay a heavy price in casualties. However, no matter what, this is good news for now. Her staff officer Finna calmed down and immediately ordered his troops to rush to the high slope. After arriving, she immediately ordered to occupy the second camp, and accordingly, the barrier mages began to set up the barrier. The undead barrier can resist the invasion of the undead to the greatest extent. As long as the undead barrier is supported, they will win this small battle. After successfully setting up camp, the special undead barrier seems to be able to isolate the hatred of the undead to a certain extent. With this barrier, the undead farther away will no longer rush here, which allows the large army to quickly gain a foothold in this second camp. Everyone will rest here for a day, so that the mages can recover some magic power, and at the same time, some people with more serious injuries can be treated, or sent back to the city. The training of the national government team ended here. Although Tang Mao's attack just now was so terrifying. However, it also consumed a lot of money. The lightning magic energy was almost exhausted. This was the first time he used this big move. However, the rewards were also very generous. After these Lygian Deadpools were killed, Tang Mao also harvested some strange bones. In addition to the spirit, the most valuable thing on the monster is the strange bone, followed by strange skin, strange claws, strange scales and the like. The strange bones from the powerful undead like Lygian Deadpool seem to exude the characteristics of darkness, which are perfect for some dark magic tools and magic tools. And his harvest from this thunderstorm is nearly 200 million, plus the reward for this mission. It is almost 300 million in total. Moreover, he has collected a lot of residual souls all the way here. Now the lightning star has been strengthened to 40, and he only needs to strengthen 9 more, so that he can cast the 5th level of Thunderbolt. Thunder magic is the most powerful existence. Tang Mao's lightning magic has already reached twice that of an ordinary person. After strengthening, it will be doubled. With the bonus of the current field, it can reach 16 times the power. Once the Thunderbolt is strengthened to level 5, his intermediate magic will be equivalent to the lethality of an ordinary high-level magic. Although the consumption is huge, the reward is worth it. Just when they were resting, Finna, the highest commander here, came over. In a tent, Finna came here without any disguise. He said it directly. He just wanted the Huaksha national government team to help them. Of course, this favor is not for nothing. She is willing to give everyone a bounty of 100 million after the matter is accomplished. Of course, she did not force it. It was up to everyone to decide whether to help or not. The reason why she came here was naturally Tang Mao's bombing, which made her eyes light up. Otherwise, even if they were excellent, they were just a group of stronger high-level mages, and she would not come here in person. AI Jiangta looked at everyone and said, "What do you think? I refuse. The training mission has been completed. There is no need to continue taking risks." Needless to say, the first person to refuse was Zhu Jiming. His family was not short of his resources, although they were not blown by the wind. But he was still a direct descendant. As long as he didn't die and went to Venice to show his talents, his future would be bright. After Zhu Jiming's refusal, Zhao Manian, Nanrangni, Mutingying, Guan Yu, Jiang Shaoxu, and Munijio also refused one after another. After all, they all had a platform behind them. There was no need to risk their lives for the 100 million yuan income. AI Jiang Tu looked at Tang Mao, Muningsu and Mo Fan who had not spoken. The three of them could be said to be the only ones in the whole team who had no support from any forces. It was indeed very tempting to have an income of 100 million yuan. Moreover, Finna didn't care about the refusal of those people at all and looked at Tang Mao in the same way. Don't look at me like that. If it's just 100 million yuan, I'm not interested. Tang Mao also refused directly. You know, there is a monarch level existence behind this. It is not an easy thing to rush into the pyramid. Tang Mao is really not very interested. As for Muningsu, it is completely according to Tang Mao's intention. She is indeed short of resources, but does this man really lack the resources he needs? Although Muningsu doesn't know where he got the money, the second galaxy vein was still given by Tang Mao. Now her wind system has reached a high level. As for the third system of summoning, she has not started to summon. After awakening, Tang Mao told her not to contract any pets now. There is no way. Although the hidden disease in her body has been solved, the power of the bow is too strong. If it is not a contracted beast of the ice system, if she contracts with Muningsu, then there is only one way to die. Of course, with his disdainful efforts, this can still be saved. In short, she doesn't need money very much now, so if her man doesn't agree, then she naturally has nothing to express. Mo Fan fell into deep thought. He was not interested in the 100 million, but mainly because he knew clearly that Xingxia would also join in and follow them to destroy the pyramid. So, he wanted to protect her. However, without enough spirit and unable to use the demon system, he was really a bit overwhelmed. Chapter 324, No Freeloader. Finna was disappointed to see Tang Mao refused. After all, she mainly wanted to invite Tang Mao. As for the others, it was said to be 100 million, but in the end she was prepared to pay according to their efforts. 100 million obviously does not exist. After all, the money in their country is not blown by the wind. However, they must pay some money. After all, their people are threatened by the undead. As long as Tang Mao can solve dozens of fiends or deadpools by performing the previous thunderstorm, then she can keep the magic power to prevent accidents. Destroying the pyramid is not an easy task. There are not only fiends or deadpool guards inside, but also more terrifying existences. She needs to deal with these unknown crises. After thinking about it, Finna said in her international language, "To be honest, I came here mainly to get your help. Because the power you showed before shocked me. Since you have the strength to fight against the fiends or deadpool, as long as you are willing to take action, it will greatly reduce our casualties." Hearing Finna say this, some people are a little unhappy. So what they meant was that they were just incidental? However, think about it. Tang Mao alone, with a thunderstorm, directly wiped out 50 ruthless swordsmen. Such a terrifying strength is really not something that ordinary people can do. So, even if they were dissatisfied, they didn't complain. Tang Mao looked at AI Jiang Tu and Nanju and said, "What do you two mean?" AI Jiang Tu and Nanju both graduated from military academies, so they would naturally not sit idly by. After all, this world does not engage in civil war. They are united, although some families will have some minor frictions. However, when facing demons, everyone is still a united front. So the two of them are naturally willing to help, not for money, but really willing to help for free. Tang Mao paused, and then said, "I want 300 million. Okay, I agree." Before Tang Mao finished speaking, Staff Officer Finna agreed directly. His price was not an exorbitant price. After all, this is a life or death job, so Finna has nothing to hesitate about. Adding AI Jiang Tu, Nanju, Mo Fan, and Muningsu, it's only 700 million. And, as I said before, how much will be given in the end depends on the situation. However, at least now there is the powerful team of the national government team. Even if they can't completely eliminate the nearly 500 sword-wielding Deadpools, eliminating 1 or 200 can also save her a lot of losses. Seeing that Finna agreed so readily, Tang Mao curled her lips and said, "You agreed too readily, it seems like I'm going to get less." To this, she didn't respond, but just explained the matter of leaving tomorrow and left. Nanju said helplessly, "Can't you be more representative? I'm not you. With resources supplied, I can only rely on myself for everything. Of course I have to be more calculative." Tang Mao shrugged indifferently. "You can also join the army and dedicate everything to the country." To this, he simply ignored it. Used to freedom, suddenly accept those rules and regulations? He really couldn't stand it, and this world allowed private territories, noble clans, aristocratic families, etc. Tang Mao would build his own home in the future, so it was naturally impossible for him to join any forces. Jiang Shaoxu looked at Tang Mao and said with some concern, "How can you agree to such a thing casually? Are you looking for death?" Tang Mao rolled his eyes and then said, "Bullshit. If there is no risk, where can you get such a good job with an income of 300 million? I can help you solve the problem of resources. Can you refuse her?" Although Jiang Shaoxu's family is not as strong as Zhao Manan's family, it is not a rich man. However, her father is also a big boss, and the resources for training a son-in-law are not bad. As long as she calls back and says that she has found a good son-in-law, then everything will no longer be a problem. Although she doesn't want to get married so early, since she has given everything to Tang Mao, he is everything to her. Although he wants to eat the soft rice, after seeing Munugio and Muningsu looking at him, Tang Mao shook his head and said righteously, "Get out of the way. I have hands and feet. Am I Shigalo?" Mo-fan, who had just looked constipated, suddenly interrupted and said, "Actually, the doctor said that my teeth are not good. You see." Before Mo-fan finished speaking, Jiang Shaoxu angrily retorted, "Get out." Then, she looked at Tang Mao again. "Can't you just treat it as a loan from me?" Her main idea at this time was that she didn't want Tang Mao to take risks. To be honest, he was still a little touched by Zhao Huf's concern. However, he was not the kind of person who would be entangled because of a woman. "Don't worry, even if the Egyptian army was wiped out, I would not die. Don't you believe in my strength?" Jiang Shaoxu wanted to continue speaking, but Tang Mao had already stood up and said that he was going back to rest and recover his magic power. She had no choice but to join the battle tomorrow. However, Tang Mao ignored her. The next morning, a new team of people gathered, and there was also a group of the most important people, that is, the temple mages. These female students are all masters of the strongest healing magic in the world. They are strong but fragile, and their self-protection ability is not very strong, so they need a large number of people to provide comprehensive protection for them. However, Finna is not stingy at all, because she knows very well that, as long as these healing people are fine, then the casualties of her army can be minimized. Among them, Yu Xingxia is naturally included. After the meeting, everyone went to the third camp. As for Jiang Shaoxu, she was still left here. She also knew that in this kind of war, her strength was not enough to protect herself. After setting off, everyone easily approached the 10-kilometer area of the pyramid. The third camp was captured very smoothly, and even Tang Mao and others did not consume much magic energy. It was just that when the barrier was established, everyone was completely isolated on this lowest mountain, and a sense of uneasiness lingered in everyone's heart. This wave-pushing advance is only suitable for the first half of the journey. After all, it will be closer to the city and not fall too deep into the undead army. But in the second half, it is a road of no return. Only victory can everyone be safe. Therefore, the journey ahead is the most dangerous one, and it is most likely that one will encounter the most terrifying resistance and siege from the undead. Chapter 325 Muningsu, are you scared? When dusk came, a streak of bright red blood smeared the entire land, reflecting the ever-changing colors and describing the cruelty of the battlefield. At this time, the fourth camp was built, and everyone took a short rest. After waiting for the new team to gather, they prepared for a new charge. Fortunately, Tang Mao had experienced the catastrophe of the ancient capital, so he didn't have too many thoughts about the current situation. Looking at Muningsu, who was leaning on him, he whispered, "Are you scared?" "Yeah." Muningsu nodded honestly, and then asked back, "Are you scared?" Tang Mao smiled and shook his head. Then he explained, when the ancient capital was in the catastrophe, the situation was many times more terrifying than it is now. Although the Egyptian undead are also world famous, it is nothing if our domestic undead face them. Khufu thought he was the king of the underworld, but he was actually a younger brother to the ancient king. Although he might not die in a battle between the two, he was bound to lose. After hearing what Tang Mao said, Muningsu asked again, how did the ancient capital catastrophe end? Seeing that she was so curious, and had asked several times, Tang Mao simply told her everything, including the fact that he had a special system. So, the terrible momentum we felt in the deserted city was actually your demon system? Muningsu thought of Tang Mao's promotion in the deserted city, and then asked after realizing it. Tang Mao nodded and said, "It's also fortunate that Lunan's men sent a blood lily, otherwise, when he was promoted to the high level of the thunder system, he would have exploded and died because his body could not withstand the backlash of that field." Muningsu turned around and gently hugged Tang Mao. "What's wrong?" He was a little puzzled about this. I only heard the cold beauty whisper again, "You have always been helping me solve the pain of backlash, but I overlooked that you are also a natural soul. I'm afraid the backlash power is more terrifying than mine." He embraced her soft body, greedily sucked her body fragrance, and then responded, "Fortunately, I have a friend who helped me suppress the violent magic energy when I awakened magic." "Friend?" Muningsu was stunned, obviously a little curious. What kind of friend is it, and he has such a great ability? But Tang Mao obviously didn't have the patience to respond. After all, he had some other ideas at the moment, and Muningsu also noticed something was wrong. After all, every time she was pressed on the bed and ravaged, it started like this! Exclamation mark. Although she has gradually gotten used to Tang Mao's rudeness, it is obviously not appropriate here. The most important thing is that there are tens of thousands of undead armies grinning here, looking like they are going to kill them. Wait until we get back. I just want to hug you. I don't have any other thoughts. Tang Mao shook his head and explained. Muningsu had a look that said, "I don't believe you." At this time, a new team also rushed over. After hearing the call to assemble, Tang Mao had to suppress the fire that had just boiled in his heart. He walked over with Muningsu. A moment later, the entire army had begun to attack the pyramid. The fourth camp was their last camp. They had to move forward bravely and rush into the pyramid. As for the rear, there were no longer reinforcement or their city, but the undead who surrounded them. So, they had no choice but to move forward. After a burst of fighting, the pyramid was getting closer and closer to the last 5 kilometers. Similarly, this was also the area with the highest density of undead and the strongest undead. The dark corpses were scattered throughout this large yellow basin, and the mirage of the pyramid was in the center of the basin. Regarding the dense undead at the moment, charge. Staff Officer Finner only uttered one word, and then a ray of blue light representing protection rose into the sky, allowing the entire army to see the signal of no hesitation. Following her order, the army turned into a surging torrent, breaking through the forest of crazy corpses in one go. Magic roared all over the sky, the light illuminated the dusk, and the breath of destruction swept endlessly. But even so, under the overwhelming pressure of the undead, the army slowly slowed down. Tang Mao, Jiang Shaoxu, Ai Jiangtu, and Nanju, who were in the army of undead, gathered together. As for Emofan, he had already run to find Yi Xingxia. Tang Mao was full of contempt for such a person who valued love over friendship. She thought that she would definitely poach his girlfriend one day. As a woman of the Parthenon temple, she would definitely have a large number of troops to protect her. He also went with them. It was too much for Tang Mao and the others to deal with the dense undead. Fortunately, the 4 of them cooperated well, so there was no pressure. Muningsu and Ai Jiangtu were responsible for limiting the speed of the undead approaching, while Tang Mao was responsible for killing them. Nanju was paying attention to the undead in the dark, as well as the undead lurking or being ignored. As Tang Mao's high-level constellations were used one after another, the undead were almost killed in large numbers. Finna was somewhat relieved to see this, although it might cost a lot of money in the end. but for the current situation, everything was worth it. However, not all teams were as fierce as Tang Mao and his men. The battle situation gradually changed from being orderly at the beginning to being extremely chaotic. The dense undead in front of them made it impossible to see where the pyramid was. Many armies lost their direction and only knew to fight these undead instinctively. Their fate was actually decided when they started to fight desperately. As they moved forward, they also encountered a large number of ruthless sword deadpools. They seemed to be dark swordsmen, and they formed an undead sword formation to slaughter some human mages who rushed over. Moreover, the people who rushed over were actually powerless to resist. Tang Mao looked at the fiendish sword deadpool in front of him, and then said to Muningsu beside him, "Zuxu, blow up those fiendish sword deadpools, I will bomb them." Muningsu nodded, and then floated into the air. Then a force of wind attribute emanated from her. Hoo hoo. As Muningsu cast the spell, many military mages looked over. They saw her silvery white flying hair, coupled with her graceful body wrapped in a dress. Even though she was trapped in a dirty and ugly battlefield of the undead, she was still like a holy and cold ice lotus, blooming so eye-catching. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.